Got that turned the wrong way now. I can't see it, so I don't know. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Jackson County Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, February 21st of 23. And I welcome you all here today with Don Schwenker, Lynn Flagel, myself, Mike Steinis, are your county supervisors. We have Bjorn and Lisa from the auditor's office, Luann, our executive assistants in the background. Mary is here from the media. The very first thing I would like to do is to recognize Macocata boys and girls bowling team. Huh? Oh, both of them are state champions. So we appreciate the coaches and the parents and everybody involved. I don't want to miss anyone, but
We appreciate them.
we sure appreciate the teams, yeah, and their hard work and dedication and everybody concerned. That's pretty amazing to have the boys and girls state champs, yes. Recognize them. Thank you very much. First on our agenda today is Mr. Todd Keeney, our Jackson County Engineer. Good morning.
Morning. So it looks like I got a pretty busy morning here. First item is the approval of the entrance permit for Joe Pouch, Class D residential, meets all the site distance, so I recommend approval.
So moved.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the residential entrance for Joseph's Fetish Push at Farmers Creek, Posh. Farmers Creek, section 26 as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, nay. Motion carried.
All right, moving right along to equipment quotes. So we got 3 different quotes in. Guess we'll start with the tandem axle bodies that I got. You know, when they hand stuff out to kids, the first one with their hand out's the last one to get it. You know.
Thank you.
So we got 2 quotes in, Peterbilt and Truck Country, which is a Western Star. Both quotes meet the spec with just minor variations, so recommending the Western Star. It's less expensive, least expensive. It's for 2 trucks, obviously.
And is there trades? No.
Yeah. 2 trades right down the 3rd and 4th row.
Oh, okay. That's all they're worth, huh?
This is budgeted, you have this
Mhm.
motion to approve the purchase of the Western Star dump trucks as presented.
I will second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve the Western Star purchase of 2 dump trucks as presented. Is there any further discussion?
And just, I don't know if they want the money total just for the total for the Western Star was 270,638. Yeah, compared to the other bid of 309,870.
Yeah, so we have 150,000 and change for the truck and we have for the 2 trucks.
Yep.
Minus the 15,000 piece per trade. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, nay. Motion carried.
You have a question?
I said minus the trade, but that's after the.
Yeah, that's minus the 30,000 trade is 270 is the total.
Yeah, simpler thing would be just to award to the bid as recommended or something like that. But that's up to you guys.
So done. All those in favor?
I thought you were in.
I-
All right, so this is the body bid, body quote. So 3 bidders on this, I guess the thing, Henderson is less expensive. But the quote from Monroe, they're quoting a all stainless steel body. And they're locking their price in. I got a letter from them. They're locking their price in. If the trucks are received in that 3rd quarter, as was quoted by Western Star. And Henderson you know, said that it's subject to, I think, I don't know. Terry, year, yours is not locked in, it's subject to,
It depends on the truck delivery. If we receive chassis this year, 2023, no problems. If things get, drug out like things have in the past, our intent would not be to change price, but with the nature of the market now, if we go out beyond a year, there is a possibility of that.
so we're not getting the chassis till 24, so more than likely. If we're gonna be subject to a price increase through Henderson, I mean, which Terry just stated.
So Monroe is locking it in through 24 until we get our trucks. Is there a time frame on our trucks getting
September of 24.
September or 24?
What happens if they don't come in then?
And
No,
I mean, we went through this process last year with the trucks and they come back and said they'd have to adjust the price. I think we did it twice.
might have been 3 times.
Might have been 3 times. So what, I mean, I guess I don't go back to the trucks, but are they locked, the trucks locked in also?
The trucks are not locked in, no. But the main difference is the value of 2 stainless steel bodies is way significantly makes up the difference in the, roughly, what is it? $3,500 in the difference in the price. When you got 2 bodies and they're both gonna be stainless steel. That the value of the stainless steel outweighs the additional cost of the $3,500 between Henderson and Monroe, so that's why the recommendation is to go with Monroe. We quote a core 10 steel or stainless steel, and you can't really get the core 10 steel from what I gathered from the suppliers, so. Monroe ended up quoting stainless, and Henderson quoted what the regular was, it AR 400 or whatever.
So the other specs are the same, is that correct? Or as far as the body goes?
Yeah,
the
so
shape and the
Henderson
body, the
and-
size and the.
Yeah, so we asked for Force America controls, so the controls for that and the plow and the setup is all the same, and Henderson or Monroe provides their body and then builds the truck with the controls that we asked for.
May I address?
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, that's your call.
Sure, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm Terry from Henderson's, and everything Todd's saying is absolutely correct. Just to clarify my bit on the body. Our long sills are stainless steel. They're stainless steel standard because that's a high corrosion area where the conveyor runs, so that's always stainless steel. The balance of the body is not stainless steel, as Todd stated. The paint prep that we do, we sandblast the body, we powder prime it and powder finish coat it. So it does get a very good finish. But hard to argue with, if you'd come back to me and ask what my stainless price would it be above the difference of 3,500? It absolutely would. So I guess I just wanted to clarify that for you guys.
Thank you.
My question is, when the bid spec was for the core 10 steel.
Or stainless.
Or stainless, so you said core 10 is not available, so you said the AC 400.
Or what do you?
What is the?
So my floor underneath the conveyor is AR 400, very highly abrasion resistant. It does have some chromium in it, so it does have corrosion resistant properties. The sides and the ends of the body though are a grade 50 steel. So it is not a core 10 and it's not a stainless, to be clear.
Does that answer your question, Don?
Sure. So is
Yeah.
that grade 50 better or worse than core 10?
It would be a lower quality than core 10.
But the stainless is still a better quality than the core 10.
Yeah, for the most part, yes.
Thickness,
What's that comment?
Yes, it is. Yes,
and again, that's your recommendation, correct?
that is correct. So if we expected stainless steel only, like Terry was saying, his bid would have been substantially higher. And we're getting stainless steel out of Monroe, so that's why I
And
recommend
it's locked in.
it's locked in as long as we get the trucks by September of 2024.
make a motion, we go as recommended with the new trucks for $221,032.
I will second that.
Motions and a second to approve the bid as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed nay. Motion carried.
All right. Last but not least, definitely not price wise. So motor graders. Man,
Are we trading a Volvo?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we know. And this is
Thank you.
mhm. All right, so there I just handed out is the quote tab. That was the first thing I handed to you. Shows all the base bids. We got 3 different bidders, Alto for Cat, Martin, John Deere, Road Machinery, which is Komatsu. Base bid, deduct for the trade, then the projected delivery date. The second sheet of paper is just kind of a little more of a summary. A few of the things we check are, machine weight, engine displacement, horsepower ranges, and then check the warranty. And then at the very bottom, I do a quick analysis of the resale of machines. In this case, we went out to 11 years, looked at 10 and 11-year-old machines. And that number is the bold number 3 lines from the bottom. And then just apply a present worth of a future sum factor that plays into the overall cost, what we call the total cost of the machine when you buy and resale. Now, it doesn't take into account operation and maintenance over the life of the machine, but it does take into account the resale at the time when the machine gets traded. So on that, the second sheet, you can see the Cat's price there with options 423, 434. John Deere 363.5 and Road Machinery at 349.60. And I should have stated this earlier. I think Sean is here, right? Yeah. So Sean was dedicated, gracious enough to come in while he still got the bad arm recovering. He's looked at all the quotes. We met last week, talked about them. He provided me with his recommendations and his experience and some of the due diligence he did. So the 3 main things, I guess you could see the Komatsu machine is less expensive. We don't have any experience with Komatsu. Sean has reached out to a couple, I think at least one other county that's had those machines. But the biggest thing I want to point out is the Cat has a 9.3 liter engine, the John Deere has a 9 liter, and Road Machinery is a 6.7. We spec a 9 liter engine. The horsepower range is close, but it's under what we spec for the top end horsepower gear at 250. The warranty is close. Again, it's at 6 years, 7,500 hours. And I don't know if it was a typo, but we asked for a 16-foot overall length moldboard. So usually everybody provides a 12-foot and then 2 2-foot extensions. They list 1 2-foot extension, but I don't think that's a huge deal. They probably could just provide another 2-foot extension, but there's not they don't have an LED light package, and we request or respect the joystick controls. But however, what they do have is their maintenance package. They provide base package, and I think right it's here you can talk about a little more detail, but I think it's up to 6,000 hours. They take care of the 6 years or 6,000 hours. They take care of the service maintenance. So the fluids and fillers and all that changes, they do that. They provide that for the machine, which is pretty unique when it comes to motor graders, but. Long story short, I mean, I'm sure the salespeople will want to speak, but based on what I talked to Sean about and just the really the major items as far as the engine size and horsepower and our lack of experience with them, I would say with the cost being that close, the recommendation would be to purchase a John Deere. So that being said, that's all.
All right, I appreciate your insight there. Sean, would you like to add to that?
I think you covered it all, unless somebody's got a question that you didn't answer. I think you touched on all the points that I had.
And would the dealers like to speak? Representatives like to speak?
Yeah, I'll talk about the Komatsu horsepower.
Sure.
So we are one of the only manufacturers in this size class that offers the transmission we do with torque converter with lockup feature. So we actually utilize the horsepower we produce a little more efficiently in that at low speeds, we have that torque converter torque amplification that a direct drive machine cannot offer. So you don't see that difference in the horsepower when you're under load the way you would with a direct drive machine. And also with the horsepower output, Komatsu is very focused on the reliability and durability, and you could get more horsepower out of an engine, but because they are conservative and they do not want to push the engine to their limit, we actually rate that horsepower conservatively in order to produce more longevity, durability, and reliability. So yes, it is a smaller displacement engine, but it can do the work of a higher horsepower machine because of its drivetrain components.
Okay. Thank you for your input. Sean, are you familiar with the torque converter type thing? You talked to other county that had a Komatsu? I guess I'm not familiar with them either.
I talked to other counties in the past. We went through this 10 years ago with the Case motor grader. Case motor grader runs the same engine that Komatsu is running. 6.7 liter versus 9 or 9.5 liter. It's not so much the horsepower I'm worried about today. What we need to look down the road at is the longevity of the engine being overtaxed for 5,000 hours, and then us having to put an engine in at 5,000 hours, we're running the machine 10,000 hours before we're getting rid of it. So does that make sense to you? If it's overtaxed from the get-go, and believe me, in these hills over here, every machine we have is taxed in the wintertime, and I had talked to other counties that had Case motor graders. Now, they did not have the torque converter, they had a power shift, direct drive. And they said about 5,000 hours and the engine blew up, and then they had to put an engine in it to get it through. And hopefully it lasted another 5 before they got it traded off. So not only am I concerned about the operator yelling it doesn't have any power, or our snow removal taking longer than it does now because they can't go as fast, I'm worried about $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 halfway through the life of the machine. So that's why my recommendation said that.
Appreciate that. Anyone else would like to speak?
When it
Any
comes
questions?
Yeah, Brian Stoley of Road Machinery.
Mhm.
When you take a look at the warranty and the Powertrain Plus warranty that we provided, the durability of the Komatsu is there. It's shared technology with Cummins engines. Both have got a great reputation for longevity. Service life is well beyond that 10,000 hour lifespan on a Komatsu engine. I'm not worried about the engine. I hear a lot of comparisons to Case. We're not Case. I'd like to know what counties that you kind of spoke to and got some feedback from.
That was Oskaloosa, Tumble Away. They had, I can't think of the county name, like I said, it's just 10 years ago. They're the ones that had 2 cases then.
I would also like to add, while these machines, you may not see them as often as you might some other manufacturers, we are building are in the field inventory. And the machines we have out have been absolutely trouble-free. And we've anywhere from 3, 4, 6,000 hours with never needing to touch the machine. So Komatsu prides itself on reliability and durability. That is their reputation.
I believe the Komatsu warranty was 6 years, is that right, fellas?
Yeah,
The way I read it.
yeah, 6
So,
years.
okay, so we asked for a 775. I think the Komatsu was 6 and was it 8,000?
We go out to 10,000 hours.
6,000.
As far as our warranty goes, the calendar years will lapse before the hours will. So when you say 7 years, 7,500 hours, we're focusing on the 7 years because that's what will expire before the 7,500 hours. So that's another thing that worries me a little bit. We're a year shorter. You understand?
Yeah, so typically, like, I don't know, Clinton, we put about 1,000 hours per year.
You know, 800, 900, maybe 1,000.
So you're talking 7,000 hours.
Yeah, in
A little less probably in 7 years.
right.
So what he's saying is you'll hit the 6 years. before
Right.
You'll come close to 7,500.
Well, so you're talking come with the 700 hours over.
Yeah, so it's gonna be out of year warranty about a year.
Earlier.
Yeah,
All three of these have the front mount for the retriever and stuff, or?
yeah,
Those controls?
the front lip group, yeah, I suspect the same.
And am I correct in saying the last two were Deeres?
Correct.
And you're happy with them?
Yep.
And they joystick?
Yes.
Could I have a chance to address the board?
Absolutely, sir.
Sure. My name is Tim Sherman. I'm the representative for Martin Equipment. One of the things that I just want to focus on is per your bid spec, we did the best job we could to meet that specification. We could have certainly bid a 600 class grader, which would have come in at a little less horsepower. But again, it's not what you asked for. So when we do the warranty, the lights, everything, it is per your bid spec. And we found when you look at the conditions that are in Jackson County, when you hang all the snow equipment on there, when you put the V-plows on the front, when you chain up all the wheels, you need the horsepower, you need the torque rise, you need the weight. So we have a number of 600 series graders that are running in smaller townships over in Illinois. They're not running 16-foot moldboards, they're only running 12. They are not chaining up the wheels like you guys are. And they will get into a heavy snow and fall on their face because they just don't have the pull down in the engines. And we're running the same 9-liter engine in a 600 series grader, but we've downed the horsepower. But again, it doesn't meet the spec you asked for. We certainly could have bid a 600 series, but that's not what you asked.
Thank you, Tim. Any other comments? Questions?
I'll add that, the higher horsepower machines need that horsepower because of their transmission, their direct drive transmission. And while they have anti-stall technology that will kick it into neutral or prevent the engine from dying, they will halt their forward progress and actually kick it into neutral. And you cannot stall a Komatsu motor grader with that torque converter transmission. You could run into a wall and it'll come to a stop, and then you can match the throttle and it'll either start pushing that wall or it'll spin the tires. But you will not stall a Komatsu transmission.
Okay, along with that, my question would be, and I know nothing about it, I'm not a mechanic. But Sean, tell me is that when a situation like that, does that damage the torque converter? Is that a warranty issue too, or is that a problem child? This torque converter thing?
Oh, every end loader we have has a torque converter in there, so no, I guess I don't see that as a major contributor.
I guess, it'd be
part of the Komatsu problem I see is the fact that it's just kind of more of an unknown commodity. And I've never driven a motor grader or maintainer, whatever you want to call them, but I have driven boats and I got an 18-foot boat with a 4.3 Mercury motor in it. My friend had a 20-foot crest line or a crown line with the 4.3 Merc Cruiser engine in it, a lot bigger boat. It takes a lot longer to get up on plane. It works harder to get people pulling water skis. And I look at the Komatsu and it's got the less horsepower. It's also the heaviest grader. And that concerns me for what I know. And again, I can't relate to maintainers and all that kind of stuff. So it almost beneath, if we could, you know, if we ever seriously want to consider a Komatsu as lease one for a year, you know, or something like that, you know, just because not that, you know, you get different mechanics and all that stuff, and there are new things coming out where you get more power out of smaller engines, all that, you know, the half-ton trucks are coming out with 6-liter diesel, 3-cylinder engines and stuff, and they're getting more, you know, pounds of torque and all that. And so there's a lot of different things changing, and it could be very true, and you might be the best machine, but in my limited capacity and knowledge, you know, it's hard to take that job.
Well, I was gonna let the salesman finish their comments, but I don't have experience with Komatsu. It may be a very fine machine. I would suggest, you know, if we're serious about considering Komatsu, the other thing that's nice is having a little bit of similarity in the controls in the machine, because a lot of times you don't have the same guy in there. This would be a unique machine, a little bit different controls. Now, mind you, we have Cat and some John Deere and Volvo right now too, which we're trying to phase out. But I would suggest, you know, if we're going to consider buying a third vendor, if you will, or type of machine, that, you know, this summer sometime we get a machine to demo and get multiple operators in it, trying it out, because I wouldn't want to buy something kind of like, I don't want to say sight unseen, but without any experience operating it, and then say, here, you know, have at it. So that was one of my concerns, and I'm not going to say anything bad about the machine. Like I said, I've never seen it run or operate. So, but before we would make a purchase like this, I would want, like, you know, get it out and demo it for a couple of weeks or something. But and we wouldn't be able to do it now, because I would want to do it in the summertime when we'd be doing normal maintenance blading.
Go ahead, Brad.
We, we appreciate the opportunity to participate. Thank you for that. Two, that is definitely a viable option. But we did bring a Komatsu motor grader to Scott County for an entire week 2 years ago, invited all the local counties. Jackson County was invited as well to attend and to take the machine out for 2-3 days and operate the machine. The only county that participated was Scott County. Muscatine County was invited. Clinton County did attend. But nobody from Jackson County attended that invitation for a week. We had a full day product walk around demonstration, walk through. The counties did bring in their Deere and their Cat motor graders, and we had an opportunity to compare. But the only county that really participated was Scott County. We have had county demo days in the past, and I would have enjoyed you guys to be there, because then that might change your minds on what you're thinking today.
Sure. Sean, or even Todd, I mean, did Clinton County know about it, or didn't participate, or didn't know about it, or?
Elliot attended from Clinton.
Yeah.
Okay.
So something like that, and I mean, and that's great. I mean, ideally, we prefer, and not that I'm trying to like keep other counties out, but I would just get the machine, and I wouldn't
Yeah, I
invite
see what
any
you're
other
saying.
counties. I would just say have at least, you know, half of as many of our guys get out and run it for a couple of days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Komatsu, it says it doesn't come with the joystick controller. What kind of controller does it
Palm
have?
controls.
Huh?
Palm control, so it still has
Little
what
levers.
you consider the antler rack up on the old, you know, steering wheel. You had the antler rack up here. So everything's fingertip controls on the
Armrest.
armrest and armrest controls.
You can kind of see it in the picture. And they're the standard
Right,
ISO
yeah.
pattern, so you don't have to learn any pattern.
Yeah, so it's, yeah, like you said, it used to be the big levers up here. Now it's little bitty levers close to it's
So your arms
much
are-
more ergonomically correct.
Your arms are literally sitting on the armrest and control the entire machine.
And they're single axis throw levers, so you're not twisting and turning and pushing buttons and having to learn a bunch of new motions in order to control the machine. It's all the same layout and the lever just move back and forth, so you're not having to start over from, you know, a cat machine.
Thank you. Any other comments? Questions? What's the pleasure of the board?
I would make the motion as a recommendation by our engineer's office of the John Deere.
I would second that, but I hope there's a way we could try to demo the Komatsu in the future and get a, or be made aware if there's gonna be a demonstration. So our guys can take a look at it to see if it is a viable substitute in the future.
I have a motion and a second to purchase the John Deere as presented. All those in, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed nay, motion carried. And mind you guys, we're not condemning your machine at all. We'd sure like to see it operate and we'd sure like to try it out. Yes, I mean, I know Komatsu makes good equipment and I believe we just bought a skid loader, Komatsu skid loader, right? Kubota. Well, we're close. We're in that cave
Letter.
territory. Thank you guys for representing your equipment.
Okay, next on the agenda is the road improvement policy. I sent you guys the draft of this, a few days ago. I updated the matrix. So I took the last last 4 petitions for paving. And just as a refresher, so
We have a cookie there, guys.
I'm trying to watch my girl's face.
the DOT, you have to have 50 paving points, otherwise, you have to have a special hearing about the project on why you're paving it. So basically, the 50-point DOT threshold is kind of a marker where you have to meet. 3 of the petitions were over 50, 13th Street, Hybrid Road, and 328th Avenue. 308th Street was not. So they look at the functional classification of the route and how it connects. Does it connect to a route of higher functional classification, like a county route to a state highway? Does it connect or have a terminus at a city or something like that? You basically get points for the ADT, the daily traffic on it, how close you are to an optional paved parallel route, and then the percent trucks on the road. So really, typically what you do for that is most county roads get 9% trucks. And if you're gonna assign a higher percentage of trucks, you have to have justification why. Like you have to have your own truck count, or you have to say, well, I got 3, heavy truck generators on this route. That's why I chose, 10 or 11 or 12% or whatever. So anyway, if you have questions about it, but I think unless you want to change it, it's probably at a point where we could consider approving it, unless you want to take more time and review it on your own. There's no hurry. So do you want to take more time and read it and come back with questions? Great, because there is no hurry for this. Basically, I want to make sure you guys are comfortable with it, but this is how you would handle and review petitions for paving and then petitions for other kind of improvements, whether we do stabilization, whether it's mechanical stabilization with like macadam or chemical stabilization with base 1 or something. And then you have a base level maintenance for a road, like a typical level A gravel road. You have like intermediate, which would be a stabilized road with like macadam or base 1, and then you'd have a paved road. So this would allow you to put like an intermediate tier of service instead of just gravel road or paved. So
is that something that you emailed us or no? Is this
Yeah.
something? Yeah, I remember that's been a while ago, correct?
couple weeks.
Weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Makes sense, but-
I guess I'd like to look it over again and
That's great.
highlight some things. That's the case, I would like a paper copy that I could highlight or have questions on.
You can have my copy. Right?
You have others?
Yeah, well, I can print off one.
That's up to the board though.
Would you like it approved before we go into Thursday night's meeting?
No. Because, there might be comments that come up that you want to address.
And this is something that we will discuss on Thursday night, too, correct?
Yeah, how long do we got there?
So just
Long
for
as you
your,
need.
Thursday night.
just for your information here, I mean, we've advertised as being here, so discussed this with Bjorn yesterday. If we need to, we have the option of moving down to the community room. Is that correct?
Can you zoom from the basement?
Yes.
Okay, that was one of the questions I had to ask. Okay. Yes, we can zoom from the basement. And then the other question I want to ask about there's going to be two presentations, one on the 5-year program, which is what the meeting's actually for. And then one on how we're going to deal with the road conditions moving forward. How did you want to order those? Did you want to do the road complaint issues first?
You know what? This is your program. So whatever you're accustomed to, if you do this in Clinton or whatever your preference would be.
We don't have a separate presentation. on
Okay,
that,
so the 5-year, I would guess we're gonna have a lot of interest in what's our plan.
I would do
I
that
think it would
first.
be, I think it would be better to do how we're gonna handle the secondary roads.
Condition.
Do that first.
The reshaping program
Yeah.
first and
Do
then go
that
into the
first so
5-year
people
program.
can understand it, so we're not fielding a lot of opinions and complaints and all that stuff. And trying, as soon as those questions start flowing, most of those will get answered in your presentation. And from there, the questions I would assume would be more, well, which roads are you gonna do first? And, things like that. But when I talk to farmers about it, when they ask me, calling up, complaining, sending videos about road conditions, I drove Mill Creek Road just the other night and it was an adventure. To understand what we're doing and how we're doing, and how they're gonna be graded or quantified, which roads get done first would be then the next questions, I think. So I would start with that one because it's gonna be the hot button topic in the room. And then from there, you might even filter some of the crowd out ones,
Okay, so I'll plan on doing the road. Addressing the road issues and reshaping program, we'll talk about that first. And then field questions and that, I'm sure additional complaints and that kind of thing, and then when that's done, then we'll go into the actual 5-year program.
Yep.
Okay. This is a public hearing, correct?
Yeah.
So are you gonna call the hearing to order for that or wait till the other presentation?
Is it a public hearing? Just 'cause
5-year
the-
road plan, yes,
It's a hearing typically.
public hearing on the 5-year road plan.
So, my guess is that we would have the presentations before the hearing. Because otherwise, we're gonna have 200 questions before your presentation. I think, like Don said, you can answer a lot of questions during the presentation. Then do we have a time for the hearing? They are
Yeah, it's 7 o'clock.
published. Well, then we'll just.
The way you can run the public hearing is we can open the public hearing and then give Todd the floor and he can give his presentation.
Correct.
And then from there, we can go into taking public comments and things, and then we can go into the.
Well, the only thing I'll caution you against that is that you want to make sure the comments you're receiving for the public hearing on the 5-year program are related to the 5-year program. Otherwise, you're gonna generate probably a lot of comments that don't have any bearing on the 5-year program. Because we're talking about a 5-year program, we have a public hearing, what's required is you have the hearing, and then later on, you approve the 5-year program. The road maintenance issues and the reshaping stuff has nothing to do with the hearing or having to get
The
approved.
questions
More
we're getting is,
just
there's
information.
nothing on this 5-year road plan that's gonna make my gravel road better. What are you gonna do about my gravel road? That's where I want my 5-year road plan.
Right,
Dollars to go.
so
That's where I think addressing that first to kind of just, I don't wanna say squash it, but just get it out of the way. So then we can really focus on the 5-year road plan and get, cause I'm gonna say, I would be surprised if 95% of the questions we get Thursday night are gonna be about what are you doing?
The
about my
problem with
gravel?
that is, like he just said, we're gonna have all the questions about the roads during our public hearing, which has nothing to do with the public hearing.
I would suggest you don't open the public hearing. We do the presentation on the roads and issue and all that, and then handle the questions and all that. When that's done, then we'll say, now we're gonna open the public hearing for the 5-year program. We do the 5-year program and then hopefully that'll, eliminate a lot of the questions that are solely about road condition and what we're gonna do.
I'm okay with that, as long as I don't have to open it at 7 o'clock like it's published. I'm completely okay with that, but if it's published that we open the public hearing at 7. Can we wait till 7:30 or 7:45 to open it?
I mean, I've been in several meetings where they were supposed to have a hearing at 10 o'clock and it was closer to 11 before they actually. got the
Okay,
hearing.
well, I don't, I guess we can ask John about that one. He's.
And if they say you gotta open it at 7, then we'll do that, that's fine, but I would say if we have the flexibility. I would, I think I agree with Don is that we probably wanna handle the road issues and what we're gonna do first. Get
But
through
even
that.
if we have to open the public hearing at 7, we can say we are now opening the public hearing on the 5-year road plan. But before we get to that, let's first talk about the road maintenance issues and the program going forward. So we can delineate, you can separate them.
Well, I'd go one further and say, if you're gonna open the hearing at 7, I would say, this is only about the 5-year program, the roads and bridges that we have in the 5-year program. This is not for an open forum for dealing with complaints. That will be after the hearing is closed.
I would say then we don't open it until after we get that maintenance part out of the way because.
And I will discuss that with.
Yeah.
Our attorney.
And then, so like I said, I'll have 2 different presentations. We'll have a TV, correct?
So if you're downstairs, you'll have the overhead projector.
Okay, so what, just so I'm clear, I'm gonna have them on a jump drive. That's what I need to give you, correct?
I probably won't be there, but you can sit on the computer and run your slideshow or whatever.
Okay, so there'll be a laptop down there
Yes.
that with a USB, I'll put it in there
Correct.
and away we go. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, we plan on having here if we have the room. I don't know what we'll have. Last 2 years, we didn't have any. There's issues this year, so my guess is we'll have some.
Well, this ain't the only year there's been issues.
But we can put 10, 12, 15 people in here easy enough. I mean, we've
No.
got chairs.
The other question is, do you want me to have printouts of the presentation for people that wanna actually have copies?
I think so, yes.
What, I don't know, 10, 15 of them?
Yeah,
We can share.
I can share.
yeah, they can
Yeah.
share, no doubt about it. They're sitting next to each other. They're with their buddies anyway, so
Okay, I'll just say 15 copies, so I'll have.
that's great plenty.
Huh?
That's great plenty.
Okay. All right. So we'll postpone the road improvement plan and take up like approval of that after the meeting, and you guys have maybe a second opportunity to look at it. Okay. Retriever quote and invoice. So it got delivered. I mean, the quote is what the invoice is what they quoted us exactly, so. I guess I don't, typically I wouldn't bring this to the board for approval, but it's on there for approval. Now, is this something that I'm gonna hand to the auditor and this is gonna get paid out of that fund, or is this something that? How did we decide to do this, or is it just coming out of secondary road fund?
I think we're gonna pay with that out of the grant that Mike and Lisa got that, I forget what it, the L.
I'd like to see them.
Yeah.
I just need to know,
How much is it?
19,940.
Okay, is that what the wishes of the board is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to make a motion.
I would,
I'll make a motion that we pay for the retriever of the 19,940 out of the LATCF grant.
I'll second that.
have a motion and second to accept and approve the payment of the invoice as presented. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye, opposed nay. Motion carried.
What is that again? L. Okay. I couldn't get that here. Here's the. Okay, bridge replacement quotes.
I got a question for Todd on that. I was talking to some of the construction guys. Did you get that picture of that roller I sent you? Is that something that's even viable for us? Or is that
See,
kind of what do you have to pull that? I mean, even our rollers, what are we pulling them with?
tractors,
Tractor?
yeah, like our mower tractors.
Yeah.
That thing has a blade on the front of it,
It appeared to, yeah.
and that would not be something we would do.
You would have to have a bigger machine to pull that almost.
Well, that's to me like that's for like grading and shaping like a waterway or something.
Okay.
That's dirt. I think that's just something you
I
can
don't-
use on dirt.
I don't know. I just see that he had one on hand and he, okay, thanks.
So bridge replacement quotes. Let's sort through the
Either
crap.
day labor.
Yeah, day laborers, did I not bring that in here? There are a lot of papers there. But, so there's 3 quotes. These were the bridges that we estimated. We're gonna be under the bid threshold of $120,000, so we went out and solicited quotes from Schrader Construction, got those back. These are the 3 quotes. The 3 quotes are all under the bid threshold. The county will have a letting for the piling. and the caps, which are just larger piling. So we'll go out, we'll have an advertisement, we'll advertise for bids, receive bids with a bid security award. They'll have to issue a bond, so the cost of those materials will not count towards the $120,000 threshold. So the only way we could do this quote process is we have a materials letting for the piling and the cap material. Because Schrader is not providing that, we are providing that, and we are having a letting for that.
We would always provide that, whether we did it with a wood deck or a concrete deck, as before, we would always provide that material.
Typically, yes. And all these three bridges, we're reusing beams, so we're taking beams out of inventory and reusing them, so.
So you're looking for action to approve the quotes as
Morning.
from Schrader.
Yeah.
What bridges are they again?
What's that?
What bridges are they again?
So you want the bridge number or the street? So PE 2154.
Can I get this from you later for a minute?
OC 2945,
Two what? 2945?
2945, and IA 1750. One's a 27-foot long, 32-foot long, and a 25-foot long. We surveyed all the bridges and the upstream channels, ran the hydraulics, so all the proposed bridge openings meet the backwater requirements of the Q50 and the Q100 storm.
This is making them cement, or is this just?
This is steel I-beams, concrete deck, 27-foot wide. It's kind of what I would call our standard bridge now. When we're gonna build a bridge, it's gonna be probably have steel superstructure, steel I-beams, and have a poured concrete deck, 27-foot wide.
Let's do it, come down when he's free.
It's within budget and all that?
So I'm down at 10:30 or.
Yeah,
I was so confident.
we'll see when the pilot prices come back in, because then we got about 70% of the cost here. We still got 30% of material cost yet to find out.
Are you looking for an action to proceed with the?
Award the quotes, yeah.
I'll make that motion to award the quotes as presented.
I will second that.
A motion and a second to approve the bridge replacement quotes from Schrader Construction. All those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed nay. Motion carried.
Okay, last but not least, I'm gonna be meeting with the two leadmen and another person from Rogers District that he takes care of, because Rogers gonna be off here for 10-12 weeks. So we'll just meet with the leadman, kind of so everybody's on the same page on how we're gonna assimilate his responsibilities. For the most part, like doing road inspections and stuff in the morning and that kind of thing. But also as we move into, 10-12 weeks, it takes us into when we start just getting into the start of our spring maintenance activity stuff. So, and again, all that's dependent on the weather. So,
I guess I got a question about Sean and or Roger. Do we have actually, or extra period of time, do we have a light duty policy? I thought for some reason at one time we implemented a light duty policy that they.
yes, we have that, and we have an agreement that Sean will be signing to do that. We're gonna, since he was hurt on the job. Once he becomes eligible, right now his doctor hasn't released him for light duty, but once he gets released for light duty, then he will come back on light duty, correct?
For inspection.
Yeah.
All right.
Now with Roger, since his was a non-work related injury, we can have the choice to offer him light duty or not, basically. We typically always offer light duty when it's a job on the job work related injury, but so yeah.
Why wouldn't we offer it?
Huh?
Why wouldn't we offer it?
If you offer them light duty, they don't have to use any of their sick or.
Yeah, and you run the risk of if he gets hurt while he's on light duty, then it becomes a work related injury. Plus, you gotta have light duty work for him to do.
Yeah.
If it was hurt on the job, I would stretch the limits of, you might have to come in there and sit and sweep the floor or do whatever, because it's better to have him working at light duty, because then you don't have the.
You're not paying out to work.
Well, you mentioned the road inspections and going in the mornings and doing that. That seems to me like duty. So I'm just saying. You know, if you're
For
gonna
Roger?
Drive, yeah, to drive and to
But if
look
he's
at.
not,
Depends on the
working,
nature
like,
of
it'd
the
be
issue.
better to have him use his.
But so the thing, why we almost always want to offer it to somebody hurt on the job, because if we don't offer it to them and they're off on sick leave, that counts against us for work time loss related injuries. That hurts our insurance. The other person didn't get hurt at work. He stays on sick leave after his surgery. That doesn't hurt our insurance.
Okay.
That's the difference.
Thank you.
Last thing, so I got my maps of the roughly 10 miles per district we're gonna do based on EDT. So I don't know if you guys want to see that ahead of time, but I'll have these at the meetings too. People can look at, but basically like it's.
I would too. I might even travel them before then.
You want me to get you hard copies? You guys hard copy people?
Yes.
I am for that, yes, cause I'm driving them.
So. Like, just like we said, we started with the highest ADT roads and
Sure.
worked from there, so.
So when you mentioned before, you already scored like 3 or 4 of these roads and you said 308 did not qualify. Huh. I would like to see the scoring. No, that's north of town. Okay.
So do you want me, I'll email you, do you guys want me to email you the new matrix and the policy just for everybody to review? And
I guess it's good for us to look at it, whether we understand it, you know, I mean, we have questions.
Emailed it once.
Yeah, I know, but it's hard to look at an
Make
email
changes.
and underline or circle it or highlight something to the point where.
You
You have
can
no questions about it?
Email
Is that what you're saying?
Well, actually, the maps, I wouldn't mind.
No, but I,
I'll get those right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to read every word of that policy. I should get a little quick.
No, some of them emails got 300 pages in their policy, but
All
I
right,
skim them.
and I'll be back with a discussion when Becky comes in and talk about personnel too.
Okay,
Anything else? Nope. All right, thanks.
time for you to move on.
I hear you.
It's a
I
long,
hear you.
it's a long 15 minutes.
Thanks, Todd. Cookies over there, Todd. They slaved over
There
there.
it is.
Yeah.
The security might.
Is there any visitors or citizens present that would like to approach the board? Questions, concerns? Hearing none, next on our agenda is John Keys, our Jackson County Attorney. Good morning, John.
Morning, Mike.
Ned,
John.
Is there cemetery, Pioneer Cemetery representatives here also, or
There are throughout the fairs.
is this concerning them, correct?
It is.
Okay.
Folks want to take the seat up here?
Yep.
I will be here.
Hello, hello.
Good morning.
We're with the Pioneer Cemetery Association, in case you didn't know. Commission.
So we're here today to discuss several of our pioneer cemeteries, and I guess at this point, I will let you have the floor.
So what we'd like to do is give you some background on 3 of them. And then we would ask to go into a closed session to talk about next steps. So if that's okay with you. So the first one we're going to talk about is Bud Cemetery, which is just south of Springbrook. We restored that cemetery in 20 and 21. So the cemetery is restored. We have, the cemetery is in a farm field about at least a quarter to maybe to half a mile from the road. And so we need an easement from the road to the cemetery from the landowner. And also the cemetery itself that has been exempted from the property. So the landowner does not own the cemetery in this case, so the county owns the cemetery. Once we restored the cemetery, we had it surveyed, and we also had the easement surveyed. And the survey we came up with shows that the cemetery would be 0.45 acres. The original exemption for the cemetery said it would be 1 acre more or less. So in this case, we have 0.45 acres and we thought that was sufficient for our needs. And the cemetery is completely restored, so. The landowner took the initial, wanted to go down and visit. He went down with the surveyor and they modified the cemetery slightly to 0.41 acres. So they reduced it by 4/10 of an acre. And then we'll talk about next steps with that. Russell Cemetery is the second one. This one's over in the Preston area. We had asked that, and part of this for a reason we're here is because we had already received permission from the previous supervisors, but we want to make sure that you're on board with what our approach to these are. So Russell Cemetery, is owned by a Dr. Cobb right now in the Quad Cities. And we sent him a letter last June informing him of his responsibilities to restore the cemetery and offered that we would take care of that for him. The supervisors a year ago allowed us to expend our funds to restore that cemetery, even though we do not own this one. The land, this cemetery is not exempted from the property. So we do not own it, but we did get permission from the supervisors to restore it using our funds, if the landowner would allow. Now, the landowner, we started that initiation or that discussion, unfortunately didn't follow through with that, and he did not respond to us. There's a new development there in that property may be on the market to be sold. So we would potentially be dealing with a new landowner who may be agreeable to allowing us to do this. So I guess what we need to do there again is talk about our next steps. The third.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
George, just a quick question. So are you assuming that our further discussion will be closed session because it's talking about legal action?
On Bud, yes. Russell, potentially.
There's only certain there's like 3 reasons why we can go into public or closed session. Contract negotiations, pending litigation, or personnel issues.
Okay, so,
And if there's not one of those, we can't go into closed session.
okay, so maybe Russell, we don't need. So I guess what we're asking or want from you is permission to restore this cemetery if the landowner allows us to go in, using our budgeted funds.
Okay, we're talking about Russell now, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, I personally, I would need much more information. Am I correct in saying, George, that to get to this cemetery, do you have to cross another property easement, that there's an easement on this other property?
This one, we do not have an easement, but it's on the same property. If we
Okay,
could
so
get to-
you don't have an easement, but the prospective buyer
Yes,
of this property does have an easement to get to where this Russell Cemetery is located, correct?
I think,
I'd like to see it on a map, to be honest with you. I really would. I have got, if we're talking about the same cemetery,
We have
I'm under the assumption that this property's already been sold.
it's,
And I've had conversation with the prospective buyer. And I don't know what I can all say or what I can't say here, but he's willing to pay for it. He's willing to maintain it. He's willing to do a lot of things for that. He'll do whatever on his own time and money.
yes.
But there's some other stipulations in this, he's buying his property for a reason. And he certainly does not want his rights infringed on. I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
Board members, can I be excused for 5 or 6 minutes? The attorney for Canadian Pacific is supposed to stop in at 10, and I want to be courteous to it.
You certainly can.
I'll be right back.
Thank you for stopping.
I do have a map. It's, I'm not sure how much it tells them. You wanna look at it?
And then you guys have like a book of all the finders cemeteries with like a representative map and things
We
like
do.
that.
I didn't bring it with me, but we do have.
What am I gonna do with this? George?
Yeah, I gotta know. What to do.
I would like.
It's just-
that is like a kind of.
Get yourself up. on it.
Can you? Yeah, can you? Okay, so this is the Cole property, yes,
Yes,
correct?
will do
It's
that.
not, is it transferred yet, Lisa?
It has not transferred
Okay.
yet, but I have spoke to the attorneys involved.
See, we haven't, so we don't know where the process is. So we could leave that one go for now to find out what's going on.
So,
So,
okay, so let's determine, I don't know if we determined yet that we're going into closed session, because I'm gonna go back to the first one. To Bud, if that's the case, we've been through this a long time here already, George, like 4 or 5 years. And I've talked to the owners, and I've talked to the son's owners, and I went down there and I visited and, and there is an easement, a utility easement running down through that valley, correct? So what we need the easement for. We can't find it.
there is, but they can't find it. There's utility pole, there's utility poles going.
So
through
there's
there.
utility poles, obviously, there's got to be an easement so they can put them in and work on,
Correct,
but we cannot find it. And we've been working on this for years.
I understand.
My point is, and what do we want that easement for? Just so we can go in there?
Yes,
We've already been granted permission to go in there, correct? From the landlord and the owner?
no, well, from the renter, not necessarily from the landlord.
From the
He
renter,
hasn't-
yeah.
But he hasn't stopped it.
Yeah, right. So I question the process of. I would call it bullying my way in or trying to force somebody to let you in. That's what I question. I don't want to spend money to try to go through legal action and have a argument on our hands. I think he's been real cooperative so far, from what I understand.
I think
I mean, the
it has
tenant- The tenant's been really cooperative
Yes.
whenever I've called him.
Yes,
I mean, he's been, yeah, do it, don't wreck my crops, but do whatever you want, you know. I don't know.
But we would like to have something that as it changes hands through the years, that gives you the easement to get in, because otherwise you can't maintain it. And I'm really upset that he moved what we said would be 0.45 acres in order to mow on the inside and the outside around a fence. To be able to do that, and he still moved the pins. And so that's where we're at is.
Well, I didn't know anything about that for one thing.
Yeah.
This is the other one, correct?
this is, but.
No, I.
This is the rubber.
This is what's wrong.
Oh,
I could see him looking up.
The problem with this property is that this road supplies several properties. I've supplied the attorney with all of the plats that have been done. There's been a significant amount of surveying that's been done out there. Honestly, Jackson County uses this, has an easement also to get back to our rec trail, part of that Spragueville rec trail.
Preston access,
It-
okay,
when-
but
if
along
you
the
move
river.
this To the west, you'll see the river and our rec trail is right there.
So
and
what,
so there's a lot
can you
of
go over to
different-
the other way first, Bjorn, and show me where the highway is? That's the Preston Highway right there?
Mhm.
Okay, so to get to this property. Do you know, George, where you're going off of that 30?
I've never. been
Okay.
there. Sorry, Mark.
That's what we need to know. I mean, we need to legally or friendly know how, it is my, I'm assuming what I've been told, that there's an easement across the neighbor's property to get to this property. So that tells me, and you're telling me, Lisa, we also have an easement for that?
Well, because if you pan out and go towards the river, you'll see
Uh-huh.
that our bike trail is there.
Yeah, is that the
So-
bike trail right there? No, that's on the wrong side of the river.
No, that's, if you highlight on that, if you click on that, Bjorn, you can see that Jackson County owns that. So our bike trail, and so that's why I know, and we also, and then there's another easement for the farmer to get to between the river and the bike trail, there's
Where's the
another easement
cemetery at?
there. So the
Right,
Down off the
cemetery,
Preston Highway.
see where that kind of that bald spot is?
Yeah. with the
That's-
creatures.
Yeah, that's what we've been told where the cemetery is at. I think that's what you told us. So when I was dealing with the attorneys with this is what I had talked to them about. I gave them all of the copies of the surveys. We talked about how Jackson County has to, you know, for whatever reason, however, but anyway, the county does too. So I know that the easement part of this transaction is an issue.
I can see that it would be. And you know, I certainly have respect for the cemetery and its well-being and that we maintain it. And I'm sure that the new owner would put in writing that he would maintain and do such things. Now, I certainly respect his opinion also of, I own this property and I don't want you to come back here at a certain time because this is why I bought it. You know what I mean? You know. So, I mean, I'm not gonna force myself upon somebody. I think you get more with sugar than you do vinegar sometimes, but, the loudest wheel, the squeakiest wheel always gets the most grease too, but, you know, so.
So to add to this, Mike, when I asked for this work session, I wasn't aware that the property was being sold. I heard about it afterwards from Sarah Davenport. told me.
Sure.
And so Sarah told me, like you said, the owner is supposedly willing to allow us to come in and restore the cemetery. But he doesn't want to give us a deed to it, and he doesn't want us to maintain it. He wants to maintain it himself, which we would be agreeable to. Our primary concern is to go in and to restore the cemetery. So, but I guess again, going back to in the past, we have asked the supervisors for permission to restore the cemetery using our funds, even though we don't own the cemetery. And that permission was granted with the previous group of supervisors. And John Keys suggested that we make sure that the three of you are still in agreement with that.
Well, I don't want us to unnecessarily try to expend funds if the new owner
Is willing to do it.
is willing, you know, so I think there needs to be some coordination and stuff and recommendations and things, but. I think right now for that one, if the property's in limbo, so to speak, we need to wait till the dust settles. And we can make contact with the new owners to figure out exactly what the game plan is, because right now it seems like we're talking about a bunch of conjecture and
Maybe
innuendo.
he'll
We need
spend
to-
the funds if you do the work.
And exactly, but again, we want to be able to do the work. And have your permission to do that.
Without owning
Either
it.
way,
Yeah,
without owning.
Without
it.
it.
Yeah,
And I don't mind you going in there to doing the work. But again, I want to be on a peaceful term.
Yes.
Of
And
course.
we have another cemetery that's very similar to what we're talking about right now. That's owned by somebody and he says it's gone. Well, the cemetery isn't gone. And we would like to find the stones and restore it. But he owns it. As far as we know, we've got to find out a little more, but we have the same problem in the fact that he doesn't want us on the land, and how do you preserve a cemetery if you can't get on the land?
And I suspect you're talking about the next one on the list.
No,
No, this is one that
Okay.
is not on the list, I don't believe. But it's another one that's the same scenario, is that how do we keep these cemeteries restored and preserved if we can't get there? And
do you have the stones for that one?
they're supposedly there.
Okay, let's discuss the ones that are on the list, because we are a little behind already, but
Definitely.
so are we in agreement that we would obviously we'll visit with the new owner. And if he's willing to pay for it, fine, but we'll work with him to restore it, and you're okay if we go down that road.
personally, I'm okay if you use funds to restore it. And if the owner is willing to restore it and use his personal funds, I'm also good with that.
Okay.
So I would like to have, I'm not gonna really I would suggest that we table it until you come back with a little more information, because we're in a really gray area here to me.
I don't know the legalities of what we can or can't do. As far as pioneer cemeteries and things like that. You know, and again, the dust has to settle if there is a new owner and all that kind of stuff. Once it's done, a simple conversation, and it might be, I've got it mowed, I've done this, I've done that, and then you're just talking a lot, you know, so I just think that one, especially, you need to kind of, it's gonna be kind of a holding pattern right now until we figure out,
Yeah.
potentially who the.
I mean, I certainly want John's opinion. I know he's busy, and I've talked to outside counsel also, which you probably have also. And the point being is, if you're crossing somebody else's land way at the beginning of it, I mean, there could be gates locked way up there already. How are you gonna get in there?
See,
If
and I
you don't
wasn't-
have a permit.
I
either.
wasn't aware that we were crossing anybody else's
Well,
property.
that is the story I have.
Okay.
So we need some more information on, or you need some also, so. Let's table that one until we get a little more information, and that's a Russell, correct?
Yes,
And let's go back to the bud. Do we have to have a closed session on that? I'm at the point where. I've been told several times from the owner, well, the original owner has passed and now it's his son, as I understand.
correct.
And he again has said to me, I will let you go in there whenever you want to, but I'm not giving you a permanent easement to go in there. So
So,
outside counsel tells me, I don't know what we have to stand on.
so we had the easement, survey. And when he went down there with the surveyor, obviously, we weren't involved in that discussion. And I asked the surveyor, did he have any concerns or questions in regard to the easement? He said, no. The only thing he had questions about was the boundary of the actual cemetery. And he had, like I said, he had moved that from 0.45 acres to 0.41 acres. So, somewhat minimal. We still have, I think, in my mind, we have adequate space to maintain that cemetery and mow it. So I would be willing to go that route, if he allows us the easement.
And I think the best way to go about that, and what in discussions is to. You know, meet him there personally and come up with a handshake agreement and then say, would you do this, I guess.
But you can't get him there. We've never been able to get
I understand.
him, period.
Well, apparently he was there with the surveyor.
Yes.
It would have been nice if we didn't know that, I guess, so.
He asked if he could have permission to talk to the surveyor and go there, and we said yes to keep things moving. We didn't know if he was gonna involve us or not. We did not.
So we're still on good terms with this gentleman, is that correct?
As far as I know, it's just,
Because there's no communication.
so I guess one of my questions for the three of you is. Do we have permission, or do we have the authority to accept a 0.41 acres boundary? Or is that something that the three of you have to decide, or can we decide?
I need legal advice on that. I'm not gonna make that decision sitting here. I mean, I need either from our attorney or outside counsel. And from what I've talked to outside counsel, and I think you're talking to the same outside counsel. Again, she doesn't know which way to go.
So when he was there,
How to
you guys
proceed.
kind of mapped out what you wanted,
Yes,
and then the surveyor came in to plot that, and he goes, no, I want this, and that's what the surveyor did.
yes.
I mean, I don't know what the legalities of what we can accept or what is appropriate, but if it's kind of. If he turned around and says, I don't want to give you anything, you got nothing.
We have a deed with this one.
Oh, you do?
Mhm.
But
1
if
acre more or
he don't
less.
gonna grant you permission to get to it, you can't, you have no way of getting to it. I know he can't stop a person from egress or egress, but again, I would not want a legal battle.
Okay.
I mean, somehow, I think we can negotiate. I have to look his name back up. I have it on file, but I'm sure I could call him again.
It's McDermott, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know his son's name, but And I may have him in my phone yet too, and I have it on file or something. But you have his number, George?
I do not have his number here.
Okay.
We've been dealing through his attorney, which seemed to work better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what we
That
started with.
Sarah started that. And she was,
Okay. Third one.
Mhm.
So this is Crab Cemetery. It's on property owned by David Moorhead. We sent him a letter last year. Well, I guess the back up some history. This is years ago. I think it's around 2004. The cemetery was in the middle of what he wanted to have this defined as a pasture for his rodeo cattle or horses. And so he bulldozed that property or the cemetery, took the stones and gave them to the commission. But he bulldozed the cemetery. It was on kind of a mound or a higher point, and he just flattened it to make this pasture flat the same. So the statute of limitations for somebody bulldozing the cemetery is 3 years for criminal respects. For civil, in this case, we do not have a deed to this property. So this cemetery was not exempted off of his land. So we met with him, I guess it was probably 2021, December. And he offered us some space for the cemetery outside of the fence, outside of this rodeo fence way. When we talked to the county engineer at the time, he told us that.
County
actually-
engineer?
Yes,
Okay.
county engineer, he said, the property he offered us is really in the county road right of way. So he didn't have any authority to offer us this property. And the county engineer said, we can't put a cemetery in the right of way. So that was, so we sent Moorhead a letter a year ago, and telling him that he had responsibility to restore the cemetery. And if he didn't want to do it himself, he could allow us to do it. And he would need to give us some space if he wasn't willing to give us the exact same space, which is probably at this point not practical. So, and we have not heard back from him. So this one is, I've had a couple different opinions. Sarah did some work for us last summer to determine what rights we have. And also I had Ron Besh and Bellevue do some work on this one, just to find out if we had any legal recourse with this. What I'm finding is, since we do not own the cemetery, our legal recourse is pretty limited.
I've heard the same thing. So I suggested that maybe we just drive out there and have a conversation, a civil conversation, and see how that goes.
Basically.
I'd be willing to go out there with you.
Okay. All right.
And just as, I don't want to be a mediator, but I think we can have a civil conversation somehow, some way.
Okay.
And maybe come to a solution. If we can't, again, according to legal advice that I've gotten, was we don't know how she doesn't know how she would approach it. I mean, on a legal basis. So I don't know where to go with that. I'm not into, again, spending a bunch of taxpayer money for something I can't win.
So we did it, when we met with him, we did have a civil conversation with him. It was friendly and we talked through it. But at one point in the conversation, he made the comment that I will not give you 1 inch property inside this fence.
Okay, well, I mean, I'd have to hear that myself, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I'd be willing to go, I guess, at some point and.
Okay.
and
Well, there
just-
might be a liability issue, because if there's rodeo stock around there, that's not exactly what you call decent domesticated farming. And there could be a tremendous legal liability for him if people have access to that cemetery and you got, whether it's bucking bulls or bucking horses or whatever. What you see on TV and you go to the shows, they don't play well with others. So there could be a legal type of an issue on that regard. I have talked to his son Jake. And there is a bit of dispute, you know, I heard you say that they came in and removed dirt, bulldozed it. They said they didn't bulldoze, all they did was add dirt to that area to level it out. It was a hog lot when they bought it. They collected the stones, they didn't exactly know if they were in the right place or not. Gave them to Joanne and they brought dirt in and leveled it out, so. That's what he is saying, so. Just to kind of, you know, that, I don't know where the discrepancy is, because I've heard several times that they came in and bulldozed a hill off or whatever. I even talked to him this morning just because I saw it here going, and he goes, no, we brought dirt in and leveled it out. To put their stock in that, but, you know. I don't know what legal recourse we have, you know, and that's not just for this one, that's kind of for each one of them. It's more like we're trying to do right by these cemeteries. But we really don't have a lot of legal legs to stand on other than we should really try to take care of our ancestors in their resting place, which isn't a lot of firm footing. You know, it's more, we're coming in here asking for favors.
Basically.
And,
Well, I
you know,
think
when you
so,
start
and-
trying to swing a legal stick at when you're asking for favors, most of the time you end up with a black eye, you know, and that's where we got the balancing act we need to work with. And,
I mean, I know that the Pioneer Cemetery has, are they part of the code, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, there is some, you do have X amount of authority to do certain things, so I guess. Again, I would need legal advice to determine what that is, you know, before I push herself like not that, you know.
then if they are, you know, you said there's a statute of limitation of 3 years. If they are found criminally, they damage it's a misdemeanor, correct?
I'm not sure. It could be, yes.
You know,
I'm not
'cause
sure.
that usually ends up kind of like a slap on the wrist kind of thing. And I saw in here, there's a file on the Crab Cemetery and stuff, and I was reading, I think, part of the code in there. And I'll have to read it again because where I missed a comment the other day, it's because I found that I'm like, oh, you know, and I was looking through it, so. Again, I think we need to talk to John a little bit and kind of find out where we stand. I mean, if you guys have outside, you know, we can do our best, but we're standing on a small spot.
Well, in the two lawsuits that I read pieces of last night is, there's very little precedent in the state of Iowa, someone being, even suing for the benefit of a pioneer cemetery.
Mhm.
So there's very little there to stand on. So it's,
Yeah,
Once you
and
start
I'm-
that, then you just get bad neighbors, I mean,
Well,
Yeah.
you know, we
it's
certainly don't.
never
want-
gonna be pleasant after that.
We
right,
certainly don't want any discrepancies, no, I mean, we again, we want to respect what's there.
Well, at one time, this was before we came in here, but I think I sat in on a meeting where they talked about. There was a cemetery close to Crab. That has ancestors with the same names,
Correct.
You restored that one, so.
but
This-
they
the
talked
group did,
about
yes.
possibly that might be. A spot to put these stones.
It's Green Cemetery, which I couldn't tell you exactly how many miles, but it's probably less than 10 miles down the road. I'm not sure. And I just noticed that there are Crab ancestors there also.
What's the one north of Baldwin that you restored?
That's real.
Real. How far away would that be?
That's
Two of
probably within the same.
them.
How many
if there was
gravestones are we
crabs
talking
that-
about with Crab?
Excuse me.
How many people are we talking about?
Crab, there's, I believe, 8.
Okay. So what kind of space are you looking for?
He was offering a strip along the road, and it was. You know, it wouldn't have allowed for parking or driving in, you know, that type of thing, but we were getting, I'd say it was probably 1/10 of an acre. Even than that, so.
Well, again, John's here now again, but I don't know what our legal course would be as far as pursuing. You know, a permanent easement to, first one is to Bud, is what you're looking for as a permanent easement, correct?
Correct.
So again, I'd be willing to try to call Troy. And I'd certainly willing to try to set up an appointment with the Moorheads if you want to go out and discuss that again. I don't know what else to do, I guess, at this point. That, how much legal action can we take, in your opinion, John?
Are we in open or closed session?
We're in open session.
My practice has always been to work with the landowners. To the maximum amount possible. I've always gotten very good results with that. With regard to easements. So certainly, filing, trying to essentially condemn an easement should be, I think, the county's last resort, of course.
Yeah.
And we probably have to have a discussion with the board once we've exhausted all other avenues. I know the Pioneer Cemetery has been doing that, but sometimes speaking with board members or attorneys can find other
Avenues.
absolutely right.
Yeah, and I like that idea. Like I do, I'm,
So.
I mean, none of us out here to get something that we don't deserve or should, Again, it's respect for what is there and whatever it may be, but.
So just a little more history, this easement that we want is through a grass swale.
Right.
And it's, again, there's utility poles in there, but they can't find that easement, but. So I
So
guess-
if the utility wanted to come and work on that pole and the owner said, no, you can't, I bet they find that even pretty bad.
They probably would, and they've got a pole that's broken off and it's just hanging there. So
We'll report it, maybe that helps.
several people of our group have reported it and they don't care. They say it's abandoned, but a poor farmer down the road is still using it. So, but I guess what
What, the utility?
Yeah.
For what I remember driving down there, them poles are pretty new.
No, there's one that's broken.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just.
Oh,
it's bad.
Yeah, I've drove down in there several times. I mean, I went and looked at the cemetery several times when you were working on it. Yeah, I mean, there's actually two grass hollows to get to it, basically. I mean. If you go down to the bottom of that, you can almost go straight up to the cemetery through a grass hollow too, correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay, from what I
We
read.
never have. There's,
Okay,
So-
it's all farmed right now.
So I guess what the approach I'd like to take with this one is. Since the landowner hasn't objected to the surveying of the easement. If we agree to the boundaries that he's reset the cemetery at. I would agree to that new boundaries if he agrees to allow us to have the easement. I'd like to approach that first and to see where that goes.
okay, and you're approaching that through attorney talk again, or how you talk?
Well, we had started that with Sarah going through him. 'Cause that's the only way to get his attention. He wasn't even responding to us.
Okay,
So, and we have the easement documented. In fact, his attorney came back with some suggestions as to how to change it. And so I've instructed Sarah to revise that so that we have a document we can hand to him and say, here's what we would agree to. And I think.
I
we
don't
can
have
do
a
that.
problem with that part of it, I guess, I don't know what the rest of the board thinks, but. I don't have a problem with approaching him like that. I mean, as long as we're on, I guess, common ground again. And I'll try to get talk to Troy. It's been a while since I talked to him.
So I guess since John is here, back to the question of. Do we have authority to agree to the boundary lines of the cemetery, since the county does own the cemetery? And
So briefly tell John again, so originally you thought you had almost an acre there?
No, 4.5.
well, the
No.
actual deed says exempted the graveyard of 1 acre more or less.
Okay.
And we set the cemetery up and
Surveyed.
there's 52 stones there. We had it surveyed. What we thought we wanted as a boundary was 0.45 acres. So less than an acre. And when they came in, they moved the stakes and they moved them in, a few feet. And it turns out it's 0.41 acres based on what they did. Now, from my perspective, we can live with the 0.41 if we get the easement. But I guess the question Mike had asked earlier is, I asked the question is, do we as a cemetery commission have authority to accept that boundary lines of that cemetery? Or is that something the supervisors have to agree to, or?
The supervisors would have to okay that. It's essentially involving real property.
Yes.
A disposition one way or the other, or a redrawing. Legally, there's certainly no problem legally with doing what you propose. The county's taking only so much as what it needs for its purposes.
Yeah.
It's less land to care for and maintain. But again, that's a supervisor problem.
So in a way, you kind of have already accepted by going with the 0.45.
0.41.
Well, the point.
The
45,
0.45, you kind of already accepted less land by doing that, correct?
That would be correct. From our perspective, yes.
I guess if it says more or less, what's more or less? Is it 0.75? Is it 0.41 or 0.45? Yeah, more or less is more or less, but if you're talking 300 acres, more or less could be 10. But if you're talking an acre, more or less could be, half an acre. I don't know.
I agree.
So I guess my point on that, George, again, I would like to go look at it again. I haven't been there for a couple of years, I don't suppose, and I'd like to look and say, yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, I would accept that if he accepts that or whatever it may be. I don't know what these guys think. I mean, first you'd have to find out where it's at. I mean, it's easy to find.
Right.
You don't want to go there when it's wet.
Right.
I mean, because you go down through the valley basically to get to it. Unless the cropland is dry and nothing's planted, then you can go across top of the hill, but the landlord's been real good from whenever I talked to him.
You still have to go up that hill and
Right, once
everywhere you go, it has to be dry.
right, I agree.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna do some damage, yeah. So that's where I stand, I guess, with that one too, George. I would have to go look and I'm okay with, if we can agree to it, I guess we'd have to look and agree to it, yeah.
I would tell you, not all of our commissioners are on board with reducing the size. And we're having a meeting on Friday to decide if we can come to that agreement.
Okay,
And part of it was the mowing, being able to mow
around the outside. of
the
it.
outside edge.
I would agree, but again, I would caution your board or commission to say, we don't need a legal battle here. We want good neighbors, Approach is part of the battle.
And as Mike pointed out, that survey description isn't inconsistent with the old description.
Is not inconsistent
Right,
when you say
that
more or
less
less.
is for the purpose of,
Yeah.
for this very reason. It's gonna be, might be a little more, maybe a little less. They haven't surveyed it. So I think it's in there for that reason, but I do think the board has to make the decision ultimately.
Okay.
So where is this at in spring?
So I can show you here when we're
Okay.
finished here. I can show you exactly where it's at.
It's
I
not
think.
real easy.
Or you want to pull it up?
It's not.
pull up
real
Ronnie
easy to
Trinkum.
See from the road.
You go east of Springbrook to where the
County.
county shed is. Take that road, I think
Ronnie
it's
Trinkum would be
387th Street.
Next trajectory, so.
McDermott owns it.
And go south about.
Oh, yeah,
a
what's
mile and a
that?
half.
Ronnie would be to the north.
I don't know which piece.
What's that number? That's highway? George?
It's at 387th Avenue. E17 east to 387. And then go about a mile. Right there, your next trajectory is the only, yeah. It's right there.
Yeah, there's a cemetery. So go over, so there's a road down, see that grass holler? Yeah, go the other way, Bjorn.
Bring it up.
To my right, our right, bring it over to the road, yeah. There's the Springbrook Highway. Or there's a highway that goes from
Spring.
it goes to Springville from the county shed. So that grass hollow goes right down the valley, and then if you look where the cemetery is, you go down there to that tree line and you can go pretty much straight up to the, if it's dry.
And that's what the easement.
Sits right on top of the hill in the middle of the cornfield.
And if you use the power lines,
Yeah, there's
That
power
gives
line
you-
running right down that valley.
yeah, that gives you
I would guess
something
goes to
see,
that farm down there, right?
because I can't find it sometimes.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. And again, George, would you like me to try to call Mr. Moorhead and see if we can set a time up? I don't know what your time frame is, or who would you like to go, or how would you like to proceed?
I'm pretty flexible. So,
So I asked the retired guy, what do you do when you retire? He said, any dang thing I want. I don't know if that's the exact words he used, but he said,
so yeah, if you've had a relationship with him, I would appreciate if you call him and see if we could meet him there.
Yeah.
And I would more than welcome to go, or
okay,
appreciate going with you.
let's try that approach once, see whatever.
Okay, and just don't make it Friday afternoon, exactly,
Not Friday afternoon?
because I have a meeting with this group
Oh.
This
no.
Friday.
this Friday.
I'll see if I can get him. Thank you.
Yeah, and obviously he's gonna wanna do it before the construction season starts because he's a contractor. So if we could get there soon, that would be best. We'd like to get the boundaries defined so we can build a fence. From,
You're talking crab now, or you're talking bud?
but
Yeah, I guess our only issue there would be, to go look at it, for us to approve. And again, whether you're gonna permit not us to do that unless you're gonna do it on foot. I mean, if it snows another 3 inches on Thursday, it's gonna be another
yeah, we're not
2
gonna do it.
I
Okay,
mean, you mean McDermott's in the construction business
yes, I believe so.
personally, but I think he owns it.
Well, yeah,
Okay,
but it could be busy.
well,
too.
I'll see what I find out from him.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I'll be there. I have your number.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are you still available for a few minutes?
I am.
Is Mrs. Cundy out there, Kathy out there?
Yes.
Shipley,
I'm sorry,
Shipley.
you had to leave? Okay, so, I guess a question for John. I mean, Kathy was on the agenda as for the painting quotes for the senior center. I had sent the lease agreement to you. I don't know if you had a time to review it.
I did. I'm gonna pull it right up here. I left my. Here at home,
And
on the office.
I'm not throwing legal terms out there or
Well-
terminology of what it says, but it looks like we're responsible for the structure. I don't know if that includes the cosmetics or the paint or, I mean, we have agreement with Andrew Jackson Care at least also, and it basically says they're responsible to, I think we paid for the material for a room for painting and to put floor in. I think we paid for the floor. They installed it, if I remember right. So it was kind of it was a joint venture, and I'd certainly entertain a venture to that. This bid for they have here for painting is, there was a little sticker shock involved with me, but
The leaser shall make all minor repairs. to the lease premises and conditions. I think wall is minor repair. Is it not?
A plain reading of it and a legal reading of it would indicate that the lessee pays for the painting. And the reason I read that the reason I think that, I read it a couple of times, is just for the language you mentioned. And also, if you look further down, okay, so from a lawyer standpoint, the way this is written, it says, here's what the lesser pays for. Any structural repairs to the walls of buildings.
correct.
And then it says everything else, there's that language in there, everything else, the lessee pays. And then further on, it talks about things like the cosmetics and decoration, which is arguably paint. So as I read it, it would seem to be, although it's not, nobody says anything about the painting, it would seem to be that those were the things that are contained in the cosmetics. It also talks about the lessee will keep the building in the condition that was in existing and in good repair. That would arguably is paint. If the county wants to partner with the lessee in the painting. I don't see anything in the lease that prohibits that on the other hand. But I'm just giving it a straight reading. Obviously, I'm not trying to make anyone angry. I don't know if this is gonna surprise the lessee. Yeah. And sorry, I left my computer up there. I should probably get on the agenda for next week, a next meeting with the attorney for Canadian Civic. Kind of updated us on our schedule.
I would hope we'd have some kind of control over the color they're gonna paint it.
Well, let's see. Take possession, maintain said premises and reasonably safe and service condition. There's something in here that says. In the conditions when they count it. Yeah, reasonably safe and service conditions. Lexi takes premises in their present condition except for such repairs and alterations and refreshment provided. Yeah, so under the duty of care and maintenance. They are to care and maintain for the premises. Except for the structural part. Furnish their own interior and exterior decorating. Will not allow a premises to be damaged or depreciated in value. So this anything about the comfortable. Suppose maybe the county wants some control over that, we probably have to put some money in for it.
Well, I know the original email from. Was that we remove an alarm system or something too. I'd have to take a look and. See if that's an issue. I don't know why I would tear something out that they're.
I talked to Sally Davies a little bit about it, and she said that she doesn't know if it's even functioning. There used to be wristbands or whatever that people had to wear, and they're not even sure where they are right now.
And I did talk to Kimberly, the new hire. About the Imagine issue, and basically it boils down to. And she really thinks that Janet is passionate about getting that thing to work correctly, maybe just boil down to a scheduling issue that when, imagine the possibility people are there and the seniors doing their activities and events, so she's just getting her feet wet here, but she thinks it can be worked out as far as the scheduling thing for them, but. I mean, she was real good about it. She had good things to say about Janet as far as what she wanted to see done there to go forward, so.
And just going off of the painting thing. I know in the past, I don't know if they do or if they would do it in the spring or when they do it, but Sherwin-Williams a lot of times does painting grants for nonprofit organizations, so that might be a route for.
You would think they would know that too. I don't mean,
I would think so, but.
who would apply for it? Is that the county applying for it, or is that NEI3A applying for it, or who?
I think either one could technically.
Yeah, I probably either one could. I don't have a lot of experience in grant writing.
No, but I mean, I would guess that Janet, if she's in charge of that type of thing, if there's grant money available for something like that. Again, it depends on if it's their responsibility to paint it. That's
Right.
what it boils down to. I mean,
Yeah, if they have someone that could reach out and explore that, they should definitely do it.
well, we don't have Kathy here, so I guess it's also tabled at this point. I appreciate your time, John, and we might call on you again.
I'm available.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. As far as I know, Marty is sick today, is that correct? That's the message I got, 5:30 or so. I apologize, Laura, are you still there? Can you unmute?
Yes, I am still here. Thank you.
I'm sorry, we kind of run over our allotted time here and we were busy this morning, so.
It was all very interesting. No problem, no problem. So I am just really here to answer any questions, or to provide information. Really, it's up to you. This is an annual report that is required by the state of Iowa's Historic Preservation Office, and so we've compiled the data with the help of Luann, and you know, this is just something as a certified local government Jackson County needs to provide. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I briefly read most of that or some of that report. If there's any major changes or corrections to it as far as annual report goes? Other than the updates?
Not for me. If you noticed anything, I'd be happy to address those.
No. And the pleasure of the board?
We gotta receive and file this, or?
We have to take action on filing the annual CLG report, correct? Laura?
Yes,
We have to
that's
approve
correct. That would be fine. Yes.
that motion.
I would second that to approve the report as presented.
Does that include reporting to the state?
Yes, this report is going to the state. They ask us to bring it to the Board of Supervisors to make sure we have your approval before we submit.
Okay, and that is the motion, correct?
Yes.
So I have a motion to approve the report and to file it, the report with the state. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay, motion carried.
Thank you.
Any business or questions for us?
And she files that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you much. Sorry for the wait.
I apologize for the wait.
No problem. Like I said, it was very interesting and I'm glad I'm not on the Board of Supervisors. Have a good day.
You too, have a good day. All right, moving right along. Joe. Jennifer,
Good morning.
you're on deck. 10 o'clock. Oh, you're too late.
Busy agenda today.
You know what, got busy.
Well, we appreciate being on today. Perfect. If you want to distribute those. I will distribute these. There. Just to save paper, I printed one of these big packages for distribution. Honestly, we'll talk about kind of high level over these there, but one I really have that. Report here. Here. Over here. It's done with the paper cuts now. There. Here.
We feel trees in our industry.
Favorite different one book.
Our industry should probably give out saplings every year with your renewal so that we can take care of the paper industry.
Well, again, appreciate the time for us to come in and present today. We are the agents on the ICAP, Iowa Communities Assurance Pool insurance, which is the property and casualty coverage for Jackson County. As well as the agents for IMWCA, who does the workers' compensation insurance for the county. We are up for renewal with ICAP, the Iowa Communities Assurance Pool. And we've provided the invoice to Lisa for what the annual invoice is, coverage overview. But what we wanted to do today was just make sure that we put together a high-level overview document so you know what that looks like, and then answer any questions that the group has regarding ICAP. So this document here is kind of the easiest one to look at and understand what's going on as far as changes year over year. So I recognize that you guys have a full agenda today and we have 10 minutes slated. So what we're always willing to do is obviously meet with the group off agenda in a work session and go into this more in depth, but wanted to provide you again that summary overview of what's happening year over year with ICAP, and then just kind of give a more of a high level explanation or definition of some of the changes that you're going to see. So in the left-hand column, again, of this document, you're going to see what the invoice looked like last year at renewal. Our renewal date is 3/1. Right-hand column, you're going to see what the anniversary with ICAP looks like this year. Long story short, it's going to give kind of the differentiators as far as dollar increase or decrease, and then percentage increase in the two columns on the right of the 2023 column. But if you go to the bottom, it's going to show you this is what the invoice was last year. This is what the invoice is this year, and it's going to show you the percent difference. Transparently, we are in what's called a hard insurance market, which means that both capacity for an insurance pool like ICAP, it's becoming more difficult for them to go out and negotiate their reinsurance contracts, which is driving up cost. And then the past couple of years, the claims history, claims activity that ICAP is seeing, it's driving costs for all members kind of across the board. So we've been very diligent with talking to the underwriter on the account for Jackson County and helping realize what are some of the reasons for the year over year increase and making sure that it's appropriate for the county. Jennifer is the local agent here in Macokota. My role is with our public entity specialty group. So I work with many cities and counties across the state of Iowa. I can tell you that this is a sizable renewal increase, but it's one that many of the ICAP members are seeing. So any discussion the group wants to have, I can go as in depth as far as why each line is increasing, or can just again provide this high level overview. But we want to make it a point to come today and just put the information in front of you when it comes to the insurance renewal and answer any questions that you have. Builder's risk coverage. Yes.
Need to talk about that today.
Sure. You bet.
And I did hand them out the same packet for you to discuss.
Yeah. So I will talk about the builder's risk coverage in a second here, but just because there is so much going on with this, I know I'm giving you a lot of information to digest right now. Any initial questions or things that you're seeing on this that you want clarity around? Or do you want me to go line by line and kind of give a discussion as far as why there's changes per line?
I'm assuming the property that part of the increase of almost 20 or $17 due to the jail coming on, or?
So that is actually builder's risk coverage. That's separate. The big property increase is, again, a combination of reinsurance increasing. So last year, the rate per 100 of building value was 15 cents per 100. This year, ICAP's renewal is coming in at 19 cents per 100. And again, a big function of that is ICAP's a member-owned pool. So you essentially have 850 entities across the state of Iowa that are pooling together contributions, sharing in the risk that they take on from a property exposure standpoint. And then ICAP administratively goes out and purchases reinsurance for an event like derecho, for example. That comes through, impacts a ton of different members. The pool itself would not be viable to pay out all those claims. And so above and beyond a certain dollar threshold per any one event, ICAP purchases reinsurance. And so the cost of that have skyrocketed. And so each member individually is paying a higher per $100 rate. And then in addition to that, just the values of buildings and personal property have significantly increased. If you think about construction material increases, labor increases, in order for ICAP to actually replace the assets, they're taking valuation increases. So a combination of value increases and rate is what's driving the majority of that property coverage increase.
And reinsurance is going up for like everybody. It's not just ICAP. The carriers have had to utilize their reinsurance. So the numbers are lower, so they have to ask for more, and they have to ask it from you to replace that.
I mean, the percentage sounds large. Is this something of a number that we received a guess, an estimate before budget season started? Or where are we with that number?
So these are claims that will be submitted for payment next week. We put in a 15% increase for this year,
So this, okay,
and we put in a 5%.
that's an estimate. What did we put in last year?
That I can't tell you. I can tell you that we did put in a 15% for this current premium. And that in the fiscal 24 budget, we put in a 5%. Knowing that that probably isn't going to do it either, but instead of overinflating it, we thought to put something in.
Correct.
in.
I do feel, I do feel confident that this is going to be, unless something drastic happens as far as a weather event that significantly impacts the Midwest, I'm confident that this will likely be our most painful anniversary. We saw an increase last year, big increase this year. At some point, the market has to level out. If not, EMC is an insurance carrier that we represent that has shown interest and started to take a look at some of the accounts that we have with ICAP. But transparently, we're having a lot of renewals with them and they're in a similar boat. It is the big packet that I gave you that's black and white is a 50-page dissertation that I know the three of you are far too busy to actually read through and look at. But it's there's a Cliff Notes version on about page 20 that will show you, not specific to Iowa, not specific to counties, but just market wide. This is what the insurance forecast looks like for 2023. What you'll see is relatively in line with per line what you're seeing for an increase year over year. But there's some things specific to Jackson County that drive, you know, even more increase. The fact that you have jailing operations, there's a fixed charge for that one piece, just because ICAP and others have seen such significant losses related to jailing operations. So there's some things specific to, you know, the exposures that Jackson County has. There have also been some pretty significant losses over the past 5 years that Jackson County's running at about a 70% loss ratio for a 5-year period, which is higher than an insurance carrier would typically like to see. So it's a combination. Almost every ICAP member we work with is seeing above a 15% increase. I'd say most are closer to that 20%, which we're above and beyond that, but there's a number of factors that are in addition to just the market. And again, if you all as a supervisor group would find value in it, we're happy to schedule a workshop to go through individually line by line and show you these are the exposure changes. This is what's driving it. But I'll say that this anniversary is not unique to Jackson County and not, you know, other counties across the state are seeing something very similar to.
This is July. Or when
This piece is a March, your workers' compensation coverage renews in July.
Well, I don't know if we have time to do a quote or search. I know on the city side, we would every 3 years or so go out and explore other policies to see if there's some equivalent and we can save some money. A lot of times it would help, but
So Don, in your packet too, one of the things that we do a little different is we have that service calendar. So we're trying to pulse the risk management side of the county throughout the year and making sure that we're catching those items prior to as well. So you'll see how we've had Zoom meetings, we've had identifiers, things like that, just to keep moving forward. Market conditions are just at the moment, 2023.
I wish we could say next year is gonna be a normal year, but I don't know if there's such a thing anymore.
I agree with her.
So I would certainly think, yeah, that you're looking out for them situations, or like you had talked about, looking at different companies and different scenarios as far as checking into them for us.
Mhm.
You'll see.
Again, it's kind of a sticker shock thing when you.
totally understand.
The same conversations that are rolling with homeowners and farms, and I mean, it's across the board. They're going up. I had a gentleman who told me, you know, maybe, remember you bought the truck 3 years ago at 43,000, and today now the truck is $65,000, but the insurance actually stayed about here. It's just a weird economy that we live in right now.
Just for a little bit of clarity on this, the piece that Jennifer spoke to. So this document here, these two look different. This is the service calendar that we proposed last year when we came in. So if you go through this list, you're gonna see beyond just the normal, if the county calls in and purchased a new vehicle and we're adding it, or you need a certificate of insurance, those are all just normal day-to-day items that the agency handles. This document will show you all the things that we promise to do proactively on behalf of the county throughout the year. So we present this so you have kind of a way to fact check us to make sure that we're doing everything that we said we we're gonna do. That's this document, which was last year. This document is what we're proposing for this year. And again, we can remove items. This is all just based on what we consider value-added services. So not a fee for service, but ways that we want to justify why, you know, we believe we should be the advisors to the county for your risk management insurance piece. I'd say we do a majority of that with Lisa and Becky are kind of our two primary contacts. They handle a lot of the workload on the county side, and then we advise from an insurance and risk management standpoint. But we did want to provide that information to you just so you can, again, fact check us at the end of each policy period and make sure that we're doing the things that we said we were going to do. So that's what those documents are for.
Well, I appreciate the update again. Like you say, it's one of them things that we have to swallow, probably. And you've probably been talking to Lisa too. We're considering putting solar on our new facility, jail facility. So I don't know what that would entail as far as, just so you're aware of the insurance.
So really quickly on the builder's risk piece, with the new law enforcement center, as that gets to the stage of construction, I think we're near there now, where as you start to go vertical with the building and there's a significant amount of assets or dollars tied into that building, we will want to at some point get a builder's risk policy in place for that building. So that's not insured with ICAP until its completion. We add that. But from a builder's risk standpoint, again, once you've done enough, you've added enough materials and you have enough kind of equity within the project, sooner rather than later, you want to make sure that that structure is insured in the event that, you know, a tornado comes through Nicocoda and takes that half completed structure out. So that's something that we will want to look to implement.
So I would guess that the construction firm has some type of insurance too while they're in construction. Is that correct? Normally,
it depends on the project. So normally, if you hire an outside general contractor, they will carry that. But from our understanding and in reviewing the contract, it appears to us that John Hansen's group is kind of overseeing construction, but it's almost a county project that you're self general contracting and hiring in. So based on that, based on our review of the contract, we've read through that. We don't believe coverage exists anywhere outside of the county purchasing a policy at this point.
That would be a conversation we should have with John, but you know.
well, I mean, we certainly need to have insurance on it as it goes up, yeah.
We've had some lengthy emails and conversations about it, and we learned that the ICAP process for builder's risk for you guys, you know, was a significant difference compared to the selective one. And we were able to secure that opportunity to protect it as you went vertical.
Okay.
So Joe, my question is within the next 2 weeks, we'll have walls.
Yeah.
Do we need coverage on day one?
Yes.
Okay.
Very putting it bluntly, yes, I would recommend it, unless again, the county can always, you all can decide at whatever point what you do and don't want to insure. So it's not like a contractual requirement that you need to have coverage, but if walls go up and something happens, there's no coverage to essentially start that process over, rebuy the materials. So we would highly recommend it, unless you're self-insuring that project for the full scope, which I believe it's I haven't looked at that proposal in a while, but I believe that's like $6 to $8 million project.
So Lisa's always been very conscious as far as liability issues, as far as, you know, and of course you've got a 200-ton crane sitting there. Swinging large objects around.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's again our responsibility.
Subcontractor.
Yes, subcontractor should be providing their own
Right.
liability coverage, but to answer your question, that piece I'm not as concerned with, because in the event that something happens and the county's brought into suit for like bodily injury from an outside party, ICAP will pick up that coverage based on the fact that you haven't enforced. We're really talking about with builder's risk, the financial interest the county has in its own project. That's what we're
Proper, the physical
talking
piece of it.
So the question I have is that it looks to me like you took earthquake insurance out. I know that originally that was quoted. Can you explain to the board about terrorism? It's an extra $201 fee.
Yeah, terrorism coverage is essentially if, I believe it's very random, if the IRS certifies an act as terrorism, there's an exclusion that exists in any policy that says if it's certified as an act of terrorism, it's excluded. So you think about an event, and this ties back to actually 9/11, just the sheer amount of insurance carriers not being able to be solvent after an event like that. There was legislation that was put in force to essentially say, if policies are excluding terrorism coverage, you have to offer the ability to provide that or to buy an endorsement to add coverage back. And it's just shared expense between insurance companies and the government for terrorism related events. Most think, okay, well, let's exclude that because we're in, you know, Macoka, Iowa, the chance of an event like that is relatively low. One thing to keep in mind though is like 2 years ago when there was a lot of the rioting type events where people were going around and, you know, causing property damage at a significant scale because they were protesting individual liberties and treatment. If there's enough property damage that exists from an event like rioting, again, it can be certified as an act of terrorism, even though the day-to-day thought process is not, oh, that's a terrorist type event. So we would recommend at 201, the county can choose whether or not they purchase it. We typically notify our clients that we would recommend it just based on the fact that it is a possibility that exists. And it's a relatively small charge compared to the overall scope of the premium, but you can't exclude it. And we can take it off for the $200.
So this is the selective proposal, so there's two in there. When I was looking at it, there's an inland marine, and then there's a different and a business premium recap, both with the same fees. So is it just one policy or is it two? I guess a lot of it, inland marine premium tools.
One is broken down one.
Yeah, one is just broken down to include the terrorism coverage. What this policy essentially is it's builder's risk just means if something's in the course of construction, we're insuring the property. So this here has a limit of 6.175 million. There is earthquake coverage that's included to the full scale with selective up to that 6.175 million. What we looked at removing because it was so expensive to have was the flood coverage. So the contract technically read when we reviewed it that you were required to have full builder's risk, earthquake coverage, and flood coverage up to the limit of the actual value of the building. The contract, you can tell, is drafted by standard architects documents. And so when we were discussing with both John and Lisa, the language really doesn't apply, or we should revise it based on the fact that the county's kind of GCing their own project. So you don't want to impose insurance requirements on yourself that are more than you actually really should be protecting against. So we looked at that particular location and the idea of paying several $1,000s for flood coverage just seemed unneeded to us. So our recommendation was revise the contract, remove the requirement of having flood coverage so that.
Out of this,
Correct.
so if there's a torrential rain,
Torrential rain, it would, if it comes in from water sewer backup or sewer lines get backed up and it comes in that way, there's coverage. If it is from the outside of the building, stuff is seeping in, there's not coverage for that event.
how much extra is that?
Several thousand. And it's, again, flood is oftentimes purchased when it's contractually required. That specific location, about the only, knock on wood, obviously, about the only event that we could have seen that being an issue is if like water tower collapses and there's significant water flow from a water tower where a company could look and say, well, that's technically a flood type event, so that coverage would need to apply, but we're confident that it would be in the county's best interest, again, to make sure that that contract's revised and to not have you paying thousands of dollars for flood coverage for that one particular project.
So we're looking for action on whether we're gonna renew or not.
My question is, I'd like to pay it in next week's claim. I mean, because I believe by March 1st, we'll have fall. So I'd like to get it going, and it is only for a year.
Yeah.
So that's why we've kind of delayed to make sure that it wasn't until we started getting walls that we want this coverage to go into effect. According to John, they're working now. He told me the last conversation that I had with him that by March 1st, we should have wall. So if you tell me if you want to pay that extra $200 for the act of terrorism or not. And if you do, then I would submit the claim for next week's processing.
Is this, so we're doing the renewal of the ICAP and adding the selective?
So you actually have
Insurance
two
for the
different
jail?
issues here. Correct. So, yes, you need to, a motion to renew the ICAP. And it's up to you if you want to do by motion to also include the builder's risk.
I would make a motion, we renew the ICAP and also include the builder's risk insurance. So we can get that.
Okay, do you want to do them separate or do you want to do them together?
You can do it together. if you
Okay,
want.
Then don't we also want that?
To include the act of terrorism?
that was your motion?
Sure.
I will second that.
A motion and a second to renew the ICAP insurance policy as presented and also include the builder's risk policy for the new construction and to include the terrorism rider, you so call it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
So do we want to schedule did you want a work session as well to go through the deeper depths of the policy?
Not, I think maybe this fall, we should look, maybe comparing the EMC policy, the ICAP and different things like that, and we can look at it that way.
We will be
Here-
back.
Here's my point of it, Jennifer. I guess that's why I have you, I trust you to say you looked out at this. If there's any red flags, you should bring them forward to us to say, you really need to study this or look for a different area or,
And we'll do that, Mike.
yeah, I trust that you will, yeah. Otherwise, yeah, I can look it over, read it over. We can spend another 2 hours, but they can, yeah.
Going over it and sharing
Yeah.
how it works and
Why wouldn't you?
what you're getting.
I appreciate it.
Thank you all for the
Thanks,
time.
Mike.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
We're getting red flags.
Take a look at it.
All right.
Lisa, if it works for you, I will.
Yeah. Again, yeah, between Lisa and Jennifer, they'll.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Are you good, Lisa?
I'm pretty threatening it.
All right, everybody still on board here with us?
Yep.
Okay, Next on our agenda, and I apologize, Andrew, you're next on our agenda. You're limited to 3 minutes.
I'll do my best.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Good morning.
Your time's up.
You're what?
Your time's up, Bob.
Oh,
That's all we care about.
I'll make it quick. I just want to kind of update you guys on a few things with us. So going back towards June, July, because I know two of you guys weren't here for this. So our budget was impacted pretty large because the number of people we had in custody. We had 20+ people in custody for several weeks. Of course, you know, we have a 11-bed jail full of 8. So we were shipping people out to the tune of about $60 per person, for weeks at a time. With that, we had an all-time record of how many people we had in custody at one time. I think it was 25. There's an article in the Sentinel Press about it. So looking at June through January, simply just because our June bills will come in July. So we've had an average daily population of 10.79 individuals in custody. That time period, the previous year was 7.5. So that kind of amounts to an extra 806 days served by inmates from the previous year during that time frame. Of course, with that comes medications, medical appointments, food, laundry, water consumption, hygiene supplies, out of county housing, court appearances, and associated personnel costs for transportation and appointments. So I've been talking with the county attorney about how we kind of try to reduce some of these extra court appearances, stuff like that. He's done phenomenal for us, reducing the kind of running. It used to be if someone was, let's say, I'm sitting in Clinton County Jail and I have a Jackson County court appearance, it was always that we had to go pick them up in Clinton County, bring them back for court on our own dime. So basically it was the county was shelling out all this money to bring people to and from that weren't even in our custody. So John has done a very good job helping reduce that, cut that down for us. We've also begun to bill the people for that. So mileage and wages, we started to bill with the courts when we had to do transports like that. You know, of course, whether we'll ever see that back, I don't know, but we are attempting to bill for that. We've also reinstituted our work release and electronic monitoring programs. So the work release allows sentenced inmates to go to and from work. It allows them to be able to contribute positively to society and keep them employed while still serving their time. Inmates that are on work release are required to pay their room and board fees weekly, ensuring that money is able to be contributed back to the general fund. So the money that comes from that, we charge $30 a day, room and board. We have not been doing it a whole lot here lately because we have to go through the small claims process to try to recoup some of that, and it's a losing venture because it's $90-some just to even file. So we've kind of been looking at other alternatives with John too, as far as how we can file that with the courts and get it directly added onto their sentencing. So I think we should hopefully be able to recoup quite a bit that way. Otherwise, people doing that work release have to pay that weekly so that we're getting that money in advance, so we aren't having to try to recoup it later. And then we had a guy here recently that was on work release. We've drastically increased the monitoring we do of this too. So it's not just people are out and about running amok and we have no knowledge of what they're doing, you know, while they're at work. So we've increased checks on them, testing for alcohol, drug use. Actually, in the first day of one guy being in, we caught him driving while revoked. So with that, we suspended his work release. We turned around and helped him work towards getting his driver's license. You know, has his license. So then he was able to go back out to work. He's of course had to pay back all that room and board from the time he was suspended from work release. So it's kind of a good thing that we're able to monitor this, kind of help the guy get his act together with his driver's license, but then also turn around and recoup that money, get him back to work so he's contributing to society. We also just brought back our electronic monitoring, which allows people to serve minor offenses to serve their jail time at home. The amount of time they must serve is doubled if they were served the time in jail. And then all costs are responsibility of the person on electronic monitoring. So basically these low-level crimes that have time to do, they're in house arrest, their time doubles, but we're able to basically recoup money from them and we're not paying to have them in our jail. So basically we're trying to save money that way too by getting that. Again, same with work release, we've really increased our compliance checks on them, making sure that they're actually
behaving and doing what they need to be doing while they're there. So anyway, these programs have been completely overhauled to ensure that people are held responsible for complying with the rules of the programs. So when we have open beds too, we've been accepting people that are Jackson County residents to serve jail time for other counties in our jail. And again, they have to pay all those costs up front. So we're trying to recoup a little bit that way too, by having these people that, we've had a few of them that were work release, for example, they work here in Jackson County, live in Jackson County, but they got an OWI up in Dubuque County. So we're allowing them to serve their jail time here. They pay all costs up front. And that way they're able to keep their job because like Dubuque won't allow them to do work release in another county. So they're able to keep their job, they're able to contribute to society, but we're also recouping some money, you know, for that when we had to ship so many out. So money from these self-paid programs contributes back to the general fund. Since December, we've taken a little over $50,000 for work release, 630 for self-pay out of county housing and 65 for electronic monitoring, which we just started here earlier this month. We only had one guy for 2 days, so not a ton, but something at least to get it running. And then while our numbers are currently low, we engaged in a memorandum of understanding with Scott County to begin holding some of their inmates. Their rate that Scott County pays pretty much across the board is $55 a day. So we figured we'll start the ball rolling on trying to get that relationship built for the new facility. So the way that works too then is just like us, when we take somebody to another jail, they bring them up here and then when it's time for them to be released, they take them back. So it's not like we're getting these people from Scott County and then releasing them to Maquoketa. They're going back to Scott County. It's just that we're temporarily housing them is all. So anyway, that's just kind of a way that we're trying to get some money back for the general fund based on, like I said, our costs that were especially high over the summer. Just another thing I want to give you guys a heads up on is the other day we had a CO that had urine soaked underwear thrown hit her mouth. So we have to do some testing based on that for bloodborne pathogens. There may be an initial cost to the county, depending on if they bill us for the individual's blood test or not. But we do plan to recoup that with restitution from the criminal charge that came along with it. Otherwise, we have a jail inspection scheduled for March 7th. I don't know if you guys are around or not, but the jail inspector will be here March 7th if you're interested in stopping over and meeting him.
What time is that?
I believe it's 8 a.m. I'll confirm that for you, but I believe it's 8 a.m.
Maybe send an email out.
Yes, I can do that. Otherwise, that's all I really had. I just kind of wanted to update you guys on what we're trying to do to help give back a little bit from, like I said, this summer when we were such high numbers and said we have an inspection coming up and just kind of wanted to update you on the stuff that's going on.
We appreciate the update and appreciate the fact that you're trying to implement some of this before the fact of the new facility does come online and we're able to functionally be in place, have a good working relationship with them and
that's my goal for this year is kind of look at, okay, how are we going to take what we have right now and then implement that into ×3, you know, so that's kind of what we're doing, a little bit of, you know, what works, what doesn't, and like I said, build that relationship now and get that ready to go. So we're not going to trying to do that as the new jail and I'm sure it'll have the kinks of its own. So try to get that up and running and, like I said, contribute a little bit back. So.
Sounds good.
okay,
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks.
I suspect that Becky will wait. Is that the case?
We'll find out. Lori has to leave to get to the chamber by noon, so.
Becky, are you okay with holding on a minute or two?
Todd's okay with the waiting?
Would you run in and ask him quick? He stuck his head in here quick. Lori, how much time do you have?
I don't need much.
Okay,
Depends on how questionable you, how many questions you have for me.
come on up.
Okay.
We're joined by Lori Rolling, our zoning administrator, and her assistant, Ruth.
We're Chili's one name.
Good morning.
Yeah. Hey, guys.
If I say it, I'll say it wrong.
All good. So anyway, we had tentatively February 28th as the date established to have the official notices mailed, or excuse me, ready to be served to the Leisure Lake property owners that were in violation of the Jackson County nuisance ordinance. I'm still waiting for, guidance from John Keys. Guidance, also talking about any court cases that are out there that we need to be aware of, but I'm still waiting for his guidance. And it's something that needs to get moving if we're gonna have things, kind of moving along in an orderly manner. Last night, we had 2 rezonings for the commission. We had 1 preliminary plat approval. Next week is 1 board of adjustment action being requested. For March, I already know there's gonna be 1 preliminary plat. Go for a subdivision up north of Bellevue. And that's a major subdivision. It's like 6 lots. And then also that's when I'm gonna bring in the one that got omitted, the Ryan Rowling one, where he had 2 pieces of contiguous property. And I rezoned the primary one, and then realized there was a snip of a piece towards the road that didn't get caught. So I'm gonna just lump that in with the one next month. And then also next month, and one thing I wanted to talk to you guys, it's not a decision or anything. I'm not ready to offer any changes yet, but just working with our subdivision ordinance, it needs some refining, it appears, and I'm gonna know a little bit more about maybe how to proceed as we start going through the 2 major subdivisions that we have, the one that was just approved last night and the other one that's coming up next month. But I can see some issues. Engineer's office sees some issues just with the timing of when things are supposed to be submitted. So there's things that say it should be submitted with the preliminary that goes to the commission. And they're like, no, that's more of a final. And the surveyor's like, we put that information together because it's expensive. We want to make sure we have the concept of the subdivision has been approved by the zoning commission before that much money and work's put into something. So we need to just maybe look at restructuring that and make it make sense, because even last night, the commission granted a waiver for certain things to just be approved with the final. And it'd be nice just to have it with the final instead of where it is.
What's the requirement, Lori, as far as neighboring properties? So how much information do they get when something like this comes up as far as a property next to them? Other than a notice in the mail or a phone call to say this is the night of the meeting, or do they get any information on the property? Like, this is what they're asking for?
They get we've been sending them a copy of the public notice that goes to the newspaper. So that's what we've been giving them. If they want additional information, they're more than welcome to ask us. Or if you feel that we need to be adding to our mailing, because some of our packets get kind of big. It's, like 10, 12 sheets of paper. So, just for an example, it's not uncommon to send that out to 40 different people if we're in a consolidated area. Leisure Lake's a good example. I haven't looked to see what we're gonna be sending for notices to neighbors for next month's preliminary plat. That'll be up in that Dressler Cheney area. That'll cover probably 30, 40 people also. So depends on what I'll take direction from you guys. If you guys want them to have the packet that the commission is getting.
I guess it depends on how we think, or somebody, whether it be zoning or us or somebody, thinks how it affects them. So, I mean, we had a brief conversation this morning about a gentleman that was not overexcited about how the process went, or the
Okay.
information that he received. I
Okay.
guess he got a notice that said, this is when the meeting is,
It was the public notice. It was the
Okay.
same thing that went in the newspaper.
which is probably minimal.
Basically.
Just saying. what they
Time,
were-
date, location, what the request was from A1 to R1, A1 to R1. And
or the size, I mean, I suppose he wasn't privy to that
He-
kind of
he could have
information.
been.
Yeah,
I didn't receive any contact questions
Yeah.
or anything from either of the neighbors that expressed concerns.
okay. I mean, I will stop in.
Okay, I'll be gone until about 1-ish.
Yep, no
just so you
problem.
know. Okay. But anyway, yeah, so just possible text amendments. Proposed to maybe the zoning.
Well,
ordinance in the coming
again,
months.
I mean, I don't suppose we're reinventing the wheel here, but I mean, there's probably. We could probably. Pay, you know, put. I wouldn't say copy from another
Oh,
ordinance or
absolutely.
anything like that, but we can plagiarize to a point to where.
Mhm.
you
Well,
know,
something
we're in
that works-
compliance to,
Something that works for us.
I don't wanna cheat, but I.
No, but it's.
Reinventing the wheel.
Well, I get it.
Out there.
Right,
We're just
and
taking a-
everybody is a little bit different. I mean, you might not, and I already have a list of different counties that I'm gonna check into their ordinance. Some are very restrictive, things that you're gonna get complaints on if people have to jump through those hoops. Some are more time consuming with the bigger counties or cities that have the staff to go through all the check.
I guess with that
checkboxes.
being said, I'd like to take a look at it before we get too in depth
Oh,
to say
we have to.
we're gonna, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, we're still Jackson County and.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I'm like, I don't wanna go with the big dogs on that.
Well-
We need to stick with what works for us.
What works for our county.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I don't think all the properties need the whole packet mailed out, maybe just a line at the bottom. That if you have further questions, they can.
That's on there.
Or
Well,
just,
that's-
or just a synopsis. Or just a one paragraph summary of the intent of the meeting versus just, hey, we're sending you the notice, you can come to a meeting. Why?
It does kind of, but I can give a little more
Yeah.
narrative, which is not a non-issue for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, non-issue.
Something like that.
Okay. And next week, I will be asked to put on the agenda again for action. Okay, because we need to talk about action going forward for public meeting for the 2 cases that had zoning changes. Zoning,
And we will have information prior to the meeting, correct?
you want just a public notice I sent to the
No,
property
I
owners?
wanted to know how it's split and what has changed and.
Yeah.
If it was resurveyed, for a reason or I'd like to see.
Mhm. And only one case had that. That
Yeah.
doesn't happen very often.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's just that that survey has not gone through. It's being held until approval is made by the Board of Supervisors.
Okay.
Okay. All right, that it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Ruth?
Thank you, Larry and Ruth.
All right then, right on schedule. Becky, are you ready yet?
I'm ready. Todd is ready.
Todd? Did you get my message?
Did you send me a text?
Yeah.
No, I was in a meeting with the league big guys.
Okay.
Complain about something?
Yeah.
That's unusual.
That's what we interrupted him.
You must have texted Bear too. He said
I
he
did.
got a text from you too.
Thanks you both. Passing the buck,
You're up.
All right, well, we are here to discuss a couple of things for secondary roads department, and the first of that is being a vacancy that we have with our engineering instrument person right now in the engineer's office. We have discussed over the past kind of year, the makeup of that department and where we go with the engineer, assistant to the engineers, engineering tech staff and all that good kind of stuff. With Todd being the interim engineer for the last few months. We recently have started to discuss that again, and we kind of have a recommendation that we wanted to talk to the board about proceeding with filling that engineering instrument person position within the engineer's office. And I'm gonna let Todd talk a little bit more about the specifics of that. Thank you.
I think that's a compliment to you.
What?
So the issue with staffing here looking forward, we have Dave, who has a few years of experience, Jaden, who's in his first year, Mike, who has a multitude of years of experience, but he's gonna be leaving, okay? So potentially, if we hire somebody brand new, the average years of experience is gonna be about like 2 years of experience in the office. So what I'm proposing to do is to technically not fill Ron's position and fill it as we're replacing Mike. So we're hiring an assistant to the engineer, and then we'd still end up with the same number of staff in the office. So you'd have the assistant, county engineer, assistant to, and then the engineering tech and the office manager. So 5 total staff, just like it was years prior. So we're not adding staff technically, we're just replacing at a different. So like Ron had PC 1 and 2, HMA 1, Ag 1 and 2. So he already had the certifications that we require for the assistant to the engineer. So technically, yeah, his job title was survey chief, but the minimum requirements of that would not have been to have no certification. So the assistant to the engineer is like a 2-year like civil technology and degree or equivalent experience. So my thought was we put it out, post that out there, and we see what we get, and we hire who we think the best hire is and what those experiences are, education wise or certifications wise they are. I mean, you know, I would think you guys have been aware, and I'm sure Becky is, the hiring market right now is a little rough, especially if you try and get somebody with more education, more experience. So I would just soon post that and see what we get. And then if we don't get anybody that meets that, we hire the best applicant we get. But I don't want to limit, I don't want to put it at survey chief, because I think we're better off hiring a replacement for Mike. And having that assistant to the engineer with as much experience in education as we can get, because we are gonna have an experience drain here real quick, so.
So do you have a job description wrote to that effect?
Yes.
That will cover? Okay, that's not something we've seen yet though, correct? I didn't want to miss something.
No, you can have it if you want it. I did bring copies just for comparison. So this is kind of what the job operated under in the previous. This is the job description that essentially was updated prior when we kind of looked at hiring the assistant or the assistant to engineer. Todd has since kind of tweaked it a little bit. I didn't even hear the things, to be honest with you. I just highlighted for a point of conversation, like Todd just touched upon some of the requirements that are in the position where they were before. Basically, you had to graduate from the high school and then maybe have supplemental coursework in advanced math or technical engineering subjects. Now we're hoping to get somebody that's got that associate degree in civil engineering, technology degree, or equivalent combination of those certifications and experience.
But it's not required. Or is it required?
It's required or equivalent experience. So, but if we get 20 applicants and none of them have it, that's why I'm saying we just hire the person. We need the best applicant and we pay them. We're not gonna list a pay range. It's gonna be, what's the HR language? Commensurate with experience. So if they meet it, then they'd be in the upper end of where that pay range is. If they don't, then it'd be at the lower end. But I don't want to limit it. That's what I'm saying.
I like the fact that you're trying to cover the experience gap with some proactivity, knowing that it's coming, to kind of get somebody on board that has the knowledge and experience that can make transitions a lot easier,
So what equals to the designation? I mean, how many years of experience equals this though?
So the degree is 2 years. I would say 2 years of experience.
Oh, well, that makes it reasonable. I would say, anybody that's been in the business, done dirt work or surveying or whatever, I mean, to the point where of some sort of experience.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of apps we get, but Hawkeye Tech, DMAC, Morrison Institute of Technology, those are all civil tech 2-year degrees, so we could get graduates. Hopefully, what I'm hoping is that I shouldn't say guys, people that are going to graduate, say in May, could apply for this job, and if we think they're the best person, we would hire them, caveat that they're going to graduate, they'll have a job waiting.
So we want to go the route of the assistant to the engineer opposed to the engineering instrument person, obviously for the reasons that he just outlined. Mike is leaving, it would give them the time if we could get somebody in here shortly or after graduation before he decides to retire to kind of fulfill some of the extra duties that the assistant to the engineer does that the instrument technician does not do.
Okay, so that's basically Mike designation right now, right?
Mike
Assistant.
Clausen is
All right.
assistant to the engineer, yes.
So would it be assistant to the assistant?
Or
Or is it-
assistant to the engineer.
Okay.
So we would like to advertise for an assistant to the engineer position.
That's the request they're making for action.
I'll make a motion to that effect.
I will second that.
I have a motion and second to
I'm just hesitant.
post the job description as assistant to the engineer position. Any further discussion?
Well, I'm just a little hesitant on the whole, you know, because we can't guarantee, and I don't want to be sitting here with 2 assistants to the engineer come next year at this time, is my only,
As far as what the time frame is for Mike's retirement, and is that what you're?
yeah. You know, we're all saying he's talking about retiring, but we all know life can change and.
Me personally, I would not think that's a bad thing.
Right.
The more experienced staff you have in this office, we can keep them here, that's a good thing for
I
Jackson
would,
County.
I would tend to agree. My point is, do you put in parentheses that you have this associate degrees or approximately 2 years experience?
Well,
It might scare some off that don't have that associates, but they do have experience.
Guess what does it?
It's a civil engineering associate degree, civil engineering technology degree, or an equivalent combination of education and experience, which provides for the required knowledge and skill set necessary may be considered.
Yeah.
All the above.
I mean, you have people that they come right out of college, they're not gonna have the experience. You have
Right.
people that if they've been out of college or have just been in the field like
On the
our
job
employee
training.
was. Our employee did not have the college experience, but he was with us for 10 to 15 years.
Right.
So.
Yeah, if we get somebody that's worked in Jones County, it's been a technician for 10 years, doesn't have the education, and he wants to come work here, then you bet we'd be considering him for a hire. you
Or
know,
Clinton County.
Or Clinton.
Or Clinton County, and you know, so
No,
like
see, they
back to
say
your.
that.
No, I don't know, but, yeah, so like your question, you know, at some point, you're gonna have a county engineer with middle, of
Right,
lower ended years of experience. You're gonna have an assistant you're gonna hire from scratch, right?
right.
You're gonna have an assistant that has little or no experience, and then you're gonna have an assistant, even if you have Mike for another year and another assistant has middle experience, I still think that's a good thing, not a bad thing. But at some point, you're gonna have a county engineer that's has whatever experience and an assistant too, that, or an assistant engineer that's probably gonna have limited experience as well. You're probably gonna have to get somebody pretty young, I'm gonna guess.
Mhm.
Well, we'll see what that does. So at this time, I have a motion on the table and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Yeah.
Aye, opposed nay. Motion carried.
Next, we're here to discuss a temporary wage adjustment for our shop mechanic. Our secondary road shop foreman will be out of the shop for approximately 8 weeks. That leave has already started. During the void, the mechanic will assume the workflow in order to keep things moving in the shop area. There is a provision in the Teamsters contract that when that happens from union to union position, they automatically get the higher wage rate. This position, we're going from a union to a non-union position, so that provision does not apply. However, in order to allow for some standardization, I recommended to Todd that we take a look at the percentage of the position that this person will fill and then compensate within temporary stipend accordingly. The difference in the wage rate between these two positions is $4.27 an hour. The mechanic will assume approximately 50% of the responsibilities of the shop foreman, so not 100%. Therefore, Todd and I came up with a recommendation to compensate the mechanic $2.14 an hour during the interim that he is assuming those duties. It could give or take a little bit with the 8 weeks, so we would just like it until Todd's direction to stop the stipend according to when he has returned and back to full duty. So our recommendation, or what we would ask for today, is a motion to approve a temporary wage adjustment for Chad Beach in the amount of $2.14 per hour.
And you're saying 10 weeks and he comes back in 8 weeks it's still 10?
No, it's temporary
Or
until.
whenever he comes back, it stops.
Okay.
Whenever he comes back full time.
Yes.
Or
Well, no,
full
limited duty. If he comes back limited duty, it'll
It'll
stop. as
stop
well.
then too,
Yeah.
okay,
Okay,
then
so-
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve the mechanic temporary wage adjustment. Any further discussion? And you're completely on board with this? You think this is justified, Todd?
Yeah, I think, from my knowledge, there's a little bit of past precedent as well. This occurred before,
So
so,
would agree.
yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Motion carried.
Rock and roll. All right.
Thank you. So the last thing I have for you
Thank
guys-
you, Todd.
You bet.
Check my
Are you around? here?
message,
Well,
will you?
you around here?
Yeah.
Alright.
You gotta love Jackson County. It's a little flatter down there.
Okay, last thing for me, confidential secretary wage adjustment. So we hired Brianna Kirk to serve as a confidential secretary for the Mental Health and Veterans Affairs Office, just under 3 years ago. The position has since evolved and she has become accredited through the Veterans Affairs Association, the same as our VA director and VA assistant have done, which means that she has the authority granted by Veterans Affairs to assist claimants in the preparation, presentation, and prosecution of claims for benefits. Whereas if you are not accredited, you can do other things, but you cannot provide any of those services. So we have a director and assistant on staff right now. We have learned through the transition of employment over there that having an additional person in the event one of those leaves with the ability to do that has been very beneficial. We sent Brianna down to San Antonio. She did the classes, she did the courses, she had to be sponsored by the government, all those good things. She did that and she is accredited. I am here today because I spoke with the VA director as well as the mental health director as she shares her part-time about adjusting the pay for the position because of that. And we would like to recommend her rate of pay be adjusted from $17.21 to $18 per hour. And we are going to ask for that effective February 20th, which was this week, Monday, just to align with the current pay period that we are in.
And is she providing those services as far as being accredited for that? Yeah.
She is not independently doing a claim from start to finish or visiting with people, but she is working with Tony and Debbie side by side as she continues to do that, yes. So yes. She is not taking independent appointments as a veteran comes in at this point.
And how does that compare to the last assistant we hired, basically,
It's still under what the assistant, it's under what the assistants make.
for zoning?
We hired in at exactly $18 an hour recently for a new employee, which is kind of where the conversation stemmed from, at least an equal wage adjustment for that respect.
So make that motion.
Second.
A motion's in a second to adjust the confidential secretary wage as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed nay. Motion carried.
Okay, that's all I had for action items today. Just a quick FYI, you will see that job posted then for the assistant to the engineer. Salary will be commensurate with education and experience. After he receives the application, since the board does set that pay, he'll just have to come in and have that discussion as to where you feel that would be.
Do you have any other?
Well,
I was gonna, yep.
okay, I would like a hard copy and an email.
Or
either, or I can print it off. Of both.
Of the postings?
Job description.
Okay.
I would like the previous job description and the new one, if I
Okay.
could, to compare.
Okay. And then there are a couple of other postings. We do have 2 PRN jailers that are no longer with us, so you'll see an ad out there trying to get some more applications just to fill who have recently resigned. And then a motor grader operator. We had an employee resign and they go through the internal, if you want to change shops or from a truck to a grader kind of thing, that has sunset as of last week. So that position is now active for the public with an application deadline of through March 8th. They'll review those and see about replacing. It'll be for the motor grader and the Macokota shop. So you'll see that out there as well.
So previous applicants have to apply again? Like if they were scored the last time, they would have to be rescored, of course, but do they have to apply?
It will
again?
be reconsidered. They just have to reach out to my office and let them know and let me know that.
That they're
want their
still
application
interested.
considered. Yeah. All the applications are online now. So anybody that submitted an application, they actually get it emailed right back to them as well. So some of them they'll re-forward it to me instead of going back on me. And I changed the date on me too. But so yes and no. Some people you can reapply, they can jump online, they can submit me their application, or they can just call and let me know they want theirs considered for the position.
Okay,
Okay,
yep,
that's all I had.
thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa, are you still here?
I am. This morning, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the February 14th, 2023 board proceedings as written by Auditor Smith and authorized publication in the official newspaper.
I'll move.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the minutes of the February 14th, 2023 board proceedings as written. All those in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed nay. Motion carried.
We need a motion to approve the renewal of a Class C retail alcohol license with outdoor service for the Bellevue Golf Club, Inc. at 32,292 395th Avenue, Bellevue, effective April 1st, 2023 through March 31st, 2024.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the renewal of the Class C retail alcohol liquor license to Bellevue Golf Course as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Alright.
Aye, opposed nay. Motion carried.
I also need a motion to rescind the motion to approve the publication in the 3 official county newspapers of the notice for the public hearing on the maximum possible tax levy to be included in the fiscal year 2024 county budget, with the public hearing date for March 7th, 2023, due to the changes in the calculation of the residential rollback rate and no longer pending legislation. It was signed by the governor. So we want to, instead of quickly putting it into the newspaper, last week we didn't know really where we were headed. Now we have a direction. So instead of getting it in the newspaper, if you could rescind the motion from last week, we're in the process now of redoing everything, and we'll come back for the same motion here as soon as we feel we have everything necessary.
So it was signed with the extension, correct?
April 30th.
To certify,
Mhm.
okay.
Is there some question on what the rollback and how it might, what the rollback might be and how it will affect us? Is that the reason for the change to the public hearing, or?
We had, in order for us to put the notice in the paper, it had to have been done last Friday.
Okay.
So instead of making sure, we want to make sure that the information that we gave you was correct. I believe Shelley did talk to you, Mike,
Yes.
made a phone call, just because we needed to pull that. We want to make sure that we have everything correctly, that we interpreted what the intent of the law and the changes were going to be. So instead of quickly doing something now, and with the extension to April 30th, it's giving us plenty of time to take a look of getting in these new valuations, seeing how that affects our budget. If we did give you correct information, so it's just kind of a resetting of the process.
I don't see any harm in re-looking at our information that we have, and if we have new information that we need to
Just want to
consider.
make sure. Yeah.
If they give us the extra time, I would certainly think we'd take it.
I will make that motion to rescind.
I will second it.
I have a motion and a second to rescind the motion that was previously made as presented. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
That's all that I have for the board today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Ooh, yeah. All right. Luann? I can just go right into waste authority at one here pretty quick.
So technically morning for the 10 minutes, so good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Calendar this week. At 2 o'clock this afternoon is a workforce CEO meeting for Don. I think you're planning to attend by Zoom, even though the weather is beautiful today. 5 p.m. tonight is Conservation Board meeting in Hurstville. And at 6 o'clock tonight is Together We Build. And I think Nin is on that board.
I think I have a 1 o'clock this afternoon too.
I gotta look at that because I don't have that on there. I thought it removed that meeting, so.
You must have printed it for me.
Which does not mean I wrote it down.
No, it's the one we talked
Okay,
about
it's on the
last week,
calendar.
that we
Okay.
can set up a Zoom for in case. It's
Well, the
a-
special meeting,
Yes,
yes, which would be 15 minutes or something,
That's the
yes.
moment, yeah.
2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. Okay, Wednesday, February 22nd at 10 a.m. Is the Pocota River Watershed Management Authority's Water Sampling Planning Meeting by Zoom for Don. Thursday, February 23rd at noon is the Bellevue Leadership Committee meeting by Zoom for Mike. At 1 o'clock is the Grantwood Scenic Byway meeting, Zoom only for Nin. I think that'll be your first meeting for them. 6 o'clock on Thursday is Limestone Bluffs RC&D meeting rescheduled by Zoom for Don. And she knows that you have to be done by 7 or she's gonna move everything you need to do to the beginning of the meeting so that you can be done by 7. Because at 7 o'clock, we have the public hearing on the 5-year road plan in here and by Zoom for all of you. Friday, February 24th at 7 a.m. is the Macokota Leadership Team meeting by Zoom for Don. At 11 a.m. is the Isaacs Weekly Legislative Update by Zoom for Mike. Monday, February 27th, Mental Health and Disability Services Governing Board meeting in Davenport, and Jack says that's actually gonna be at 1 o'clock. They know that, he just, when I talked to him this morning, he said it's at 1 o'clock. They're trying to get out of the way of the early childhood Iowa meeting at 4 o'clock, because they always run into each other. So at 4 o'clock that afternoon will be early childhood Iowa council meeting, into it or by Zoom for Nin and for Jack. At 6 o'clock, Monday night will be the Board of Adjustment meeting in the community room or by Zoom for any of you that want to attend that. Our next regular meeting will be Tuesday, February 28th at 9 a.m. Yeah, I do believe that takes care of the business I have for today, so.
I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're getting closer. So, do we still have a budget work session today?
You want one?
If we have questions. We may have a few questions, I suppose, I don't know. Other boards or commission reports? Did have a
Do
teacher?
anything with this and Bernhard?
That's old,
That's,
correct?
that's part of the CLG package. They had to send in the applications of any new, there's 2 of them there.
Okay,
Should be one on the back of that. It had to go as part of the package to the state, the applications from our
gotcha.
new commissioners.
Thank you.
Any other boards or commissions? We did have a DCAT meeting on last Friday. Everything's going there as planned, working well. Percentages are, for budget purposes, are on track. Again, there won't be as much allocated. DHS has taken over part of them responsibilities. But it's going as planned, and it is a good program. We did have I did have legislative board meeting last Friday. I have several pages of notes. We talked pipelines, we talked eminent domain, we talked about how long it would take, which they thought to be couple of years into progress. The tax levy, I don't know how much information you're getting on that as far as combining some of the funds as supplemental, general supplemental. The reason, a lot of the reason for that was that there's 30 counties that are over their 350 limit. And as my understanding, it's very contentious. Very. Whatever the Zoom meeting was they had was loud and obnoxious. Apparently, and if you mention like what's the word they said not to say, or you're completely out of the meeting. I mean, local control. When you say local control.
We're losing local control. They'll
Well,
just shut
if you
down.
mention that out there, you're pretty much out to, I don't know. So anyway, they're talking about, well, I don't know what that will do. We'll add a certain levy to another levy. I guess that's yet to be seen.
I've been
There's
watching.
multiple
Yeah, it's a
parts
Senate
to it.
study bill that I was watching concerning that, so yeah, it's interesting to see how that's progressing.
There's many forms of the EMA bills out there as far as jurisdiction. If the board has, if the supervisors have jurisdiction, if the state has jurisdiction, that's yet to be seen too. Or if anything comes about that. There's 4 or 5, 6 comp board bills out there that are being presented. I haven't read them all. There are some that will not work for us for sure, and there's some that may work. So I guess we'll have to see what transpires there too. They're talking again, like we do, we vote supervisors by district. They're talking about redoing that maybe for everybody. I don't know how that would work. We go,
I thought that was only gonna affect the top 10.
I don't know the parameters of all that either.
Based on population.
And the governor proposed a government realignment of some offices, and they're talking about the Attorney General could override our local county attorney on some of our local cases, so I don't know, they're almost to the point where they want to take some local control.
Looks like local control.
So again, we talked some mental health, it was a lengthy meeting again, but we talked mental health, and they think they're trying to get the 15% budget override carryover, they think they'll get 10, so they're actually pretty happy about that. They talked some about a bill for rural hospitals and Medicaid reimbursements that it could be a good possibility that our local rural hospitals will get a better reimbursement for their Medicaid care. So it's interesting to sit on. I just started a new book, so I'm taking notes every meeting, but if I can keep up with current legislation or not, but.
I had a workforce all board meeting like yesterday. They're chewing over whether they want to apply to a Department of Labor program to identify what they call good employers, and it's something that the Department of Labor has just put out, but there's relatively generic descriptions of what it could be. The individual groups, they're going to select 16 areas throughout the United States to do this pilot program. You get to set up your own criteria, what it means to be a good employer. So it becomes like a certification through the Department of Labor. We're cautiously looking at it, trying to figure out if we're going to apply. They did a couple of audits in Burlington and Davenport of their centers, and everybody passed. The one thing they're looking at coming up is right now they're still struggling with youth certifications and trying to get them going. And right now the state has set some criteria up that pretty much nobody's been able to kind of meet. And there's some funding implications if they don't. You got 2 years to get it under control. If you don't, the state comes in and does some things. So they're trying to get that under control. And then the Cleo, the head elected officer, John Irwin from Clinton, informed us, Jim Irwin informed us that there's 7 or 8 districts work, where the Mississippi Valley work district. There's 7 or 8 other districts. 3 of them, or about 33 counties, have withdrawn from the program completely because of the funding they're not getting for their state and their support. So they don't feel, and there's some financial obligations and implications. They talked a little bit about it out at, we're out in state in beginning of February. They talked a little bit about it there, but 3 of the districts have now officially withdrawn from the workforce program. And so 1/3 of the counties are not participating. So we don't know quite what that's going to do as far as implications. Our district is sitting pretty well, I guess. From what I understand, we get about 42% of the funding because most of the manufacturing and unemployment is within our district. So we're not really apples to apples compared to those other ones when you're talking about Northwest, North Central, Southwestern Iowa, where things are pretty spread out and mostly agricultural. So
Well, and that's where I struggle with some of the legislation that goes through, they got to consider all the counties and all the, how their territory lies and how rural we are and compared to, so wherever the legislation is being brought up at, so I guess it's interesting.
could be interesting how it pans out, But nobody said local control, so we got to talk about.
Yeah.
We have the elected official meeting today at 2:00, so we'll sit on that. We'll probably get to talk a little bit more in depth about it. So.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
There's a motion. I have a motion. Somebody set the alarm off. I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.